Oh, we're live.
Oh, yay.
Jen sprung it on us.
She sprung it on us.
She's not even here.
I
I think
know.
she might be testing. I don't know. She hasn't dropped me the YouTube link to share, so I don't know.
We'll find out. And until then, yeah, I don't see.
But yeah, I was saying to her earlier, I wanted to do more of this kind of stuff because there's a lot happening up here to your neighbors of the north that, the implications are fairly large. And because we don't have the pomp and theater behind our politics as much as you guys, or, not as much as the UK, but they still do have some, gravitas around their political system and an audience that hungers for that next little thing. Here we get a story, Justin Trudeau blackface, and it leaves the news cycle the next week. People forget about it, and then they vote him back into the office.
Yeah, we have a similar phenomenon regarding certain politicians.
Certain things, yeah. But I mean, overall,
did not leave the press. Also because he tended to repeat them.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I had to, because I'm in Toronto. This is SJW Central for North America. I had to fight with friends who were, leftists to some degree. I'm more center left. I'm a liberal. I'm a traditional liberal. And say, well, how can you sit there as someone who is for the legalization of drugs, but then condemn a man because he once reportedly smoked crack? Now, if you want to come to me and say, well, he lied about it the first time, okay, yeah, but lying isn't generally a crime. It's dishonest, and you can use that in discussion, but you can't condemn the man for that. So I don't understand how you can be for this one thing and then condemn someone that you just don't like, because that's what it comes down to. You just don't like the person.
Right.
On the other hand, like, come on, can we have some consistency? Can we meet on one of these issues here?
Asking for consistency in the current political climate in the entirety of the Anglosphere, I'd say, is a pipe dream.
Oh yeah, the Overton window
is with the drug reference.
The Overton window is on wheels at this point, and it just keeps swinging around. And I just, I have leftists calling me a conservative. I have conservatives calling me a liberal snowflake, and I'm just like, you people need to get out of your own asses. Like, we can have a discussion here and not have to generalize in such ways. Like, I do that from time to time, but I mean, if you're obviously going to present yourself as one of these generalizations, then yeah, you'll get called out on it. But
I think the great tragedy in the West is that the word liberal has ceased to have its meaning.
Yeah.
Most of the people who identify now as liberals are utterly illiberal.
Yeah.
They are regressive, and
regressive leftists, yeah.
And they're absolute authoritarians. And in that regard, they are no different than the cross-clutching Christian right. The harpies who scold about card playing and dancing, and the principle.
I even have to remind some of my conservative friends and people I talk to about that and say, that not 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, your side was kind of doing the same thing. So don't just start slinging mud across.
Ben Shapiro still does.
Shapiro, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, he still does. There is, I have eschewed the paradigm of left and right for authoritarian versus individual. If you support individual liberties and a belief that people should just generally be left the hell alone to lead their lives as they see fit, providing they are not actively harming other people, they should be left alone.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And not violating certain moral principles that we have about murder, theft, endangering and damaging children, torturing pets, things like that.
Yeah, I believe the only protected classes we should have are things that can't protect themselves, like children, like pets.
The elderly.
So at some point,
the mentally and physically handicapped. The
Yo.
I can't say handicapped, differently abled, but
I'm a cripple. You can have a retard pass.
okay, well, but you know what? Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah, the PC crowd. Yeah.
mhm. They think that somehow or another the individual's handicap will miraculously disappear if they call them differently abled. It won't. If you're blind, you're not going to get your sight back by
Do you
somebody not
know?
calling you blind.
I don't know your situation, and I'm not asking, but I know in my situation, it's that kid glove approach that actually kind of makes me feel a little worse because you're treating me as a protected class when no, I'm not. Yes, I might need a little help here and there, but for the most part, I'm still an individual. You don't need to treat me with kid gloves. And when you do, it is actually quite insulting.
Yeah, don't patronize.
Don't tell me how I identify.
It's
Like,
patronizing.
you are the people who are saying, oh, you have to, respect people's identities. Well, my identity is a fucking cripple and partially retarded. So you don't get to tell me that retarded or being called or identifying as a cripple is wrong. This is why I like Monkey so much, because he's very adamant about that. And I'm like, hey, this is something I can get behind. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's patronizing as hell to, oh, you poor, pitiful thing. I mean, there's nothing worse than having somebody heap pity on you when all you asked was, can you get that can off the top shelf, please?
Sure.
I'm so aware of people not wanting to be patronized that sometimes I am reticent to do what I think is right. You'll see people in Rascals in the grocery store, and they can. You don't know whether they're actually crippled or whether it's because of their obesity or whatnot.
Sure.
But it's especially when the people are a lot older. I've taken to. I'll go by and say, look, if there's anything you need to get from one of the upper shelves and you need help, just give a holler. I'm going to be on the aisle for a minute.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
I do
and
the
then
same.
leave it at that.
If I see, a short little elderly woman in the grocery store, or hell, even just somebody who's short, they don't actually have to have a disability or something.
Right.
And I see them eyeing something on the top shelf, I'll be like, if you need a hand, I can, because I'm tall. I'm a lanky, 6 foot tall white dude, so I can reach things pretty well.
and there are plenty of people who will ask for help. Now, pride is the thing that we all wrap ourselves in, sometimes very often to our own detriment. But I've been in the grocery store with my husband. He's 6'3", and he's had a couple little ladies say, I hate to bother you, but could you get XYZ down? Because they put like these 2-liter soda bottles. They will put them at over a 5-foot height.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which is, number one, those are not light. And they wouldn't feel too good conking off your head if you're trying to just shimmy them down by the, being able to barely touch
reach,
them with your finger.
Chance.
Yeah. But also it's just, it's not a comfortable height unless you're well over 5'5" to pull them down, particularly.
Sure, yeah.
I'm lucky. I'm 5'7". I don't have too much difficulty getting things off of high shelves, but I have had to stand on the lower shelf when something's been pushed too far back. And I hate it when they put glass jars on the top.
My wife will do that, and then I'll just reach over her head and grab it.
Yeah, but that and freezer units are sometimes very deep.
Yeah.
That you feel like you have to basically crawl inside the thing to get whatever's been pushed to the back.
And luckily I'm Canadian, so the cold in one of those doesn't bother me.
But you still figure that somewhere on the security camera in the grocery store, somebody's getting a really nice ass view of me as I'm slithering inside the case to get
Does
that.
Prospero got back?
Yeah. No, not really. So it's just kind of embarrassing to have to crawl into something to pull it forward. Yeah. There just aren't enough employees to pull them to the front. I understand this, but back when they used to.
For my detriment, it's mostly things on the bottom shelf. So my thing is bending down, getting at it, or even just looking at, the labels on the shelf or something. So again, my wife comes in very handy there because she's, 5'5" or something like that, and she can easily, you know, reach it. I can't see that price, hon. Can you grab that little can of what have you? And yeah, reaching up, a little uncomfortable, but it's at least doable. It's the bending over that kills me. So when I'm alone, it's
yeah. Grocery stores are not. I find, because I wear reading glasses, but not distance glasses, that trying to see things on shelves, I'm walking back almost to the shelf behind me and then coming forward to get it and then going back. And it's kind of pathetic. That and the wall of stuff distinguishing objects gets kind of strange because manufacturers all have the same labels, you know, like same colors that they use on the labels, even for the different products. And it's like, okay, are those the French cut green beans or are those the regular green beans? the trials and tribulations of living in the first world. Listen to us. That's big time first world problems.
I every time I walk into a grocery store, I thank my lucky stars. I live in a city where the access to not only this abundance of food, but the diversity of food from all around the world is available to me.
Mm-hmm. How quickly we become spoiled by availability.
I mean, a lot of that disconnect comes from people who have never, slaughtered a chicken. Mm-hmm. I have. I'm a city boy, but I spent a lot of my teen years growing up on farms in rural Ontario, summertime jobs, what have you. Learning that, and in fact, I started off as a vegetarian in my early teen years, mostly because of the dietary things that were coming out, clean up my acne and be healthier and blah 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 blah. But the first time I ever slaughtered a pig, I turned around and I said, I can't not eat this pig. He's been my friend for like the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. It would be disrespectful to slaughter him and then not have anything to do with what he provided for me. Very Native American sort of philosophy about
people who tended their own stock recognize the importance of using every bit of that. Otherwise, it was a wasteful kill.
Yeah, and you can't afford to waste it. And I with that disconnect between born and bred city folk, we've got to sort of introduce some sort of agricultural rural education into city curriculum.
Yeah, so that people don't think chicken comes from a chicken plant or something. I mean, it just magically appears in the hands of Tyson or Purdue or any of the large, and no, that's not how it happens. What we do is we mass produce, we mass farm and ranch now, but we used to. Everybody had their own chickens. Everybody had a couple hogs. And if they were lucky,
or you would have chickens, your neighbor would have hogs, and you'd trade.
That's it, and hopefully
supplement each other's.
And people would have, beef was a different issue. Yeah, but
you'd have a cattle rancher down the way, and you trade him a pig for
and
half a cow, and
people kept
your
milk
neighbor
cows.
would trade 4 chickens for the other half of the cow. And
people kept milk cows. And they were self-sufficient in that regard. Sure, and now everything comes from the magic factory. And people just don't have any idea. They take one look at a large chicken processor and they see unspeakable cruelty in some cases. And they're correct. They're correct in that. And there has, I don't believe in, I think you can raise animals for a profit and not have it be some kind of industrial part.
Treat them somewhat ethically,
yeah. I mean, poultry concentration camp of cages. That
you are breeding them and raising them as a product, but you can still treat them like they're living beings,
right? Well, now most, damn well that pig was cared for because you cared about it. Now it was slaughtered and you ate it, and then somebody's like, but you killed your friend. And it's like, number one, friend is being used loosely here. And number two, yes, and I honored the value of that pig in my life by eating every bit of tasty bacon, all the chicharrones, every loin chop, all the way down to the jowls, and the it all gets used.
Oh yeah.
As much of now, I'll draw a line at chitlins. I'm just not eating them, but
it's a choice. It's a taste thing. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's more of a poop shoot thing. But I've had a fair bit of awful or strange things. I mean, I grew up I'm Southern by heritage, so things like fatback were a common seasoning. If my mother cooked bacon, she saved the bacon grease. You seasoned with the spare meats that really weren't all that tasty on their own, like trotters or jowls or something like that. You could use that with greens or beans or something to provide seasoning or make stocks out of it.
Right.
But that means it's used. There are only two of us in our household, and I still, after Thanksgiving, take the carcass of the turkey and make stock.
Oh yeah, that's totally what I did this year.
Whether I use it all, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't get around to using it all. And so by the next Thanksgiving, there I am cleaning out the containers that I put the stock in the freezer. But there are other times that I'm like, all right, I've got enough leftover turkey in the freezer. I'll make some turkey hash with this, or turkey soup.
Yeah.
I prefer turkey hash,
because those are big goddamn birds.
Yes, they are.
Especially for two people.
They are, but if I don't cook it, who's going to cook it for me, kind of thing. Now, my cousins and I have been sharing Thanksgiving, but we're going to their place this year for ours, because that's coming up the end of this month. But
yeah, and we just had ours, so we've already gone through our turkey comas this year.
Well, it's not unlikely at all to find people cook turkey at Christmas here.
Same here.
We don't do a lot of goose. Ham is popular, and some people do standing ribs if they've got the scratch to pay for a standing rib.
Yeah.
Those are expensive. Now, there's a lot of meat on them. I mean, people were like, "Oh my God, that thing costs." Yeah, it's like, yes, but you know how much beef is actually.
You're getting value out of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's a special treat. Certainly not something I'm going to buy for Sunday dinner every day. But I've got a cat driving me crazy right now. So if you hear me go, "Oh," it's a claw issue.
No worries, I can relate. Although my little stinker's off sitting behind Mummy.
Well, our little stinkers were napping, but, I plugged the microphone in and it's like, hey, Mom's doing something. We ought to go interrupt her.
Yeah. They're almost like children that way.
Except they don't seem to grasp the telephone. I drove my mother absolutely berserk, because if she got on the telephone, she said it was like you had to decide to tell me every aspect of your life. You couldn't wait till I got off the phone. No, because then I'd forget what I was going to say. Well, so what? It couldn't have been that important anyway.
When are you coming back, Jen? Are you going to grace us with your presence, or are we just going to hijack your stream and shoot the shit all afternoon? I don't mind. Prospero's entertaining. I love her.
Are we having technical difficulties here?
I opened up the chat, and apparently she's just we're just waiting for some people to trickle in. If that was that was a while ago. I don't know what she's doing.
I can't even find the stream.
Yeah, I've never been a big excuse me. Wow. Woo.
Don't die on me. The
life of a habitual smoker. Yeah, you have those coughing fits every now and again, or just whatever. I don't even remember what I was talking about.
Where is the stream chat? I can't find it.
If you have the StreamYard open, just on the right side, there's private chat and live comments. Just click on live comments.
Oh,
That'll
there it
show you
is.
the YouTube chat. Yeah.
Well, usually
Hey, Della Hayes.
I get. Hey, Della.
Yeah, sorry, we're just shooting the shit right now, waiting on the proverbial snow Mexican to grace us with her presence.
Oh, there's the link. Huzzah. I knew I can't read the screen clearly enough, so it was like, where the hell am I? What am I
put
doing
that on
here?
social media. Yay. Oh boy. There we go. Stupid social media. Yeah, I know you're here, Elowen. You're sitting right next to me. That's the wife.
Oh, okay. Well, now I can put the names together. That helps. Oh, I didn't know she used Snow Mexican. Got it.
Yeah, Jen is Snow Mexican. This is her other channel.
Why does this not surprise me?
Right?
It's
I thought it was genius. I'm like, I can't believe they're letting you get away with this, but yeah, let's do it.
Oh, well, it's a term of endearment. That's at least that's what we say down below the parallel.
I mean, like we were talking about before about PC-ness, like even calling somebody what they are is now some form of derogatory speech.
Yeah. Well, that and the terms change constantly. They change constantly because we went from, I mean, thinking back across the years, that people might be identified as Mexican or Spanish or Cuban or whatever. And then it became like the more generalized
Latino.
Well, it was also, there was Hispanic, Chicano, and Latino. We've worked our way through all of them. And then magically, the 10th year of the study of the dead language of the Romans, Latinx showed up. Because I was like, what the hell is Latinx?
It's Latin, but fabulous.
I was like, and why don't they call it Latinx instead of X? I'm like, you got a little issue. And of course, people of color is such a callback to colored people, which became absolutely verboten.
Yeah.
As a term. So it's like, what on earth?
I don't use that terminology if I'm referring to someone and I need to describe them. Like, oh, my friend James is coming over. Oh, how will I know who he is when I answer the door? Oh, he's black.
Or he's the soulless. It's the soulless ginger, you know.
Or he's the soulless ginger, or Jenny's, a short white girl. Like these are just descriptors. They're immutable characteristics. It's not derogatory to speak a fact.
I love it when they go after
and the nomenclature is black. They're not physically, literally black.
Yeah, it's just the term.
It's the nomenclature. It's chosen. It's the jargon.
At one point, since we went through colored, Negro, and then black, then African American, and then back to black.
Yeah, I mean, as a rational society, I think we've kind of settled on something as benign as black, but then people still take offense to it. But whatever.
Well, white is not very descriptive.
No, but I mean, it is a descriptor, but it's not very specific in that, white how? White Russian? White English?
White pink? White
Middle Eastern? White
Well, I mean,
Latino?
It's like some people cast like pink and blue, and some people cast a little yellow brown.
Yeah.
but they're all considered white, but none of them are white. I mean, I don't see Casper the Friendly Ghost.
No. But I mean, just like you would say black, obviously somebody who's
Right.
black is not literally black. Somebody who's white is not literally white. But these are, very simple terms that the mass majority of people can
Yeah, most people
latch
don't
onto
give a
and
rat's ass.
use as a proper jargon, and use it benignly and not necessarily as a pejorative.
Well,
So
yeah.
I say stick with it. We found a good label. Let's stick with it. Let's not use it derogatorily. But people will be assholes. They'll use it. Yeah, your dad is so white he's pink. I'm so white I'm see-through and like you said, pinky blue. But then if I get any amount of sun, because my father's Middle Eastern descent, I get that olivey tinge in my tan. I don't get the sort of reddish brown that most Western white people do.
Mm-hmm.
Western European white people descendants do. Yeah. So I look when I have no tan, I look like my mother. When I do have it, get a bit of a tan, I start to look like my father. And when he got a tan, oh my God, he could almost pass for black.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like in just the skin tone. Obviously, his features were very Middle Eastern-y, Eastern European, but just his skin tone, yeah, he could, if he got a deep tan, he could pass for black, no problem. It's actually kind of funny.
Well, what's funny is, like when you were talking about is that Russian, Eastern European, Western European, white. That's one of the things that amuses the hell out of me with Richard Spencer and his ilk.
Mm-hmm.
Because you ask them to define what they mean white, and they're like, "You're an idiot. You're just an idiot." Sargon did that, and they were like, "You moron. I mean, are you going to say that Morgan Freeman's white?" And it's like, it's not what I'm asking.
No.
Define it. Does it or does it not include Slavs? Does it or does it not include Celts? Does it or does it not include Mediterraneans? Does it include certain Middle Eastern peoples? Does it include, and they are all like, well, you just know it when you see it.
It's like, that's not an answer, first of all. And second of all,
that's a definition of pornography. That's a definition of white.
Yeah, if you can't, like, how can anybody take you with any seriousness or legitimacy if you can't answer a basic, simple question to what you're trying to, the message and ideas you're trying to espouse?
I mean, are you talking Aryans, or are you talking everybody who isn't Asian or African descent? Is that what you're talking on about? Because
is it just all Caucasoids, or is it
because
just anybody who isn't Negroid or Mongoloid?
Which we can't use these terms anymore because herder.
Oh, I'll fucking.
Well, I mean,
I'm not gonna use a hard R, but
anthropologists use
I've got no shame
for ages,
But, yeah, of course, and those are the proper terms.
They were
scientific terms. Well, they still are. Just people are
afraid of them.
Yeah, and afraid to use them in common dialogue and common parlance. And I'm sure if this was a little bit more of a popular stream or more frequent in stream, the host might get some kind of demonetization or something if we were talking about that in depth and using these proper scientific terms, because some butt hurt snowflake, shorten that to butt flake, that works.
I think that works.
Some butt flake will send a report to YouTube, or their automated system will pick up on these words and be like, nope, demonetized.
Oh yeah.
For what? Using proper science? I thought you guys were the guys who were the groups of people who were saying, look at the science, look at the science.
Oh, they only do that for certain things, because you've got people running around screaming about climate change who lose their shit over GMOs, and it's like, well, then you don't science real well, do you?
Sure. Or, can you point me to some of the science? Oh, well, you're just uninformed. Exactly. That's why I'm asking you to point me to some of the science, because I want to be informed.
Citation, please.
You seem like you know what you're talking about climate change, but you refuse to give me any sort of scientific data. Hey, Bernie, where are all these majority of scientists?
Well, I like the fact that Elizabeth Warren finally put a price tag to her. Yeah, and it's like, oh, sweetheart. Do you actually know how much money that is? And if you take all the money away from the wealthy in the United States, you still can't fund it. You can take all their money away.
100%.
Yeah, all of
And
it.
you still won't be able to accomplish your goals.
That's it. And I mean, you know, because they love to talk about our military budget, which oddly enough, as far as size of the federal budget,
Sure.
is not the size most people think it is. You take the whole thing away and turn it into and use it for her plan, and it will fund it for 4 months. You know, it's interesting how numbers break down. One of the things people were screaming bloody fucking murder about was how much money had been spent on Trump playing golf.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's been however many million they cited. So I looked up the federal payroll statistics, and the closest I could get on hard numbers was from 2017. And I was like, do you know that that amount of money funds the federal government for 5 hours? And we're just talking federal employees.
Yeah.
That's 5 hours.
Plus, they conflate all these numbers into one lump sum by, okay, well, Secret Serviceman, the pilot who had to fly him out there, the staffers who have to be there 24/7. Well, you know, basically 24/7 in case something happens.
What did it cost to send Secret Service agents to hang out in Martha's Vineyard? It ain't cheap up there. You know, that's not a cheap place to visit.
No, it is.
And I mean, of course, there is this kind of spending, but when compared to the cost, the overall cost of the federal government, if you're talking about multiple trips to go play golf, costing the same amount of money as 5 hours worth of federal employees, you're straining at a gnat and passing a camel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do. And then I tried.
That's an analogy I haven't heard, or a metaphor I haven't heard in a while. Thank you for that.
It's a rip off of, you know, it's more possible for a wise man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, no, I got it.
But also just, you know, I can't crap this gnat out, but you know, camel came out. It's
easy.
Yeah, they don't understand its scale, and they certainly don't understand statistics or statistical modeling. Bill Whittle did a wonderful video a number of years ago talking about if you took 50% of the money away from the Bill Gateses and his ilk to try to fund the federal government, you ran out of money.
They'd collapse within a week?
No, you run out of money in October, and then you have to raise taxes on everybody else. Because here's the funny thing. If Bill Gates has $1 billion, and you take half of that away, the amount of income $1 billion generates is sizable. This works exponentially. It's interesting.
It's one of the wonders of a capitalist society like this.
But what money can be generated from 500 million that can be taxed is far less than what can be generated by $1 billion. So your revenue, when you hit him up for 50% of his net worth the next year, is going to have decreased. And it will decrease until it's nothing.
Yeah.
Or damn near nothing. And they don't see that. They don't see that it becomes Maryland, the state of Maryland.
They outright refuse to acknowledge it. Yeah.
Yeah. The state of Maryland introduced a millionaire's tax to help with their budgetary problems. At the end of the first year of instituting their tax, they had a $2.2 million shortfall.
Yeah.
In the budget, because you know what millionaires do? They leave.
Yep.
And millionaires who lived in Maryland could live in Virginia just as easily, because most of them are in the greater DC area. It's a high concentration of wealth in that part of the country. And they just plop themselves across the Potomac. where Virginia isn't sticking it to them. I don't know why people keep trying the same shit over and over again and getting the same result, but they keep trying, expecting a different one. I mean, what was that, Einstein's definition of insanity?
Yeah, repeating the same process over and over, expecting different results. It's literal insanity. But here's something that I do sort of agree with, like the Bernie camp in that let's fix taxes. Let's make it so that a wealthy person, whatever your definition of wealthy is, personally, I'm thinking like various ways, as somebody like me who's
they already pay the majority of all the taxes.
Yes, they do.
And I mean,
but they're
hideous imbalance now.
Their businesses pay less.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember the consequence to taxing businesses at the same rate that you tax general wealth.
No. I don't want to do that. I want to abolish things like tax incentives, rebates for, donating to charity, say. Philanthropic work. You either do that or you don't. You're not going to get a reward from everybody's tax money for doing good in the world. If you're going to do good, do good. If you're just going to be in business to make money, that's equally fine by me. But I hate using the word loopholes because they're not loopholes. I just want to fix some of it so that it's not like giving away things for free, like Amazon.
The problem with Bernie's
could be paying as much percentage-wise as the varieties, the bodega downstream.
And what will stop Amazon from leaving the country?
Yeah, that gets into international business practices.
There's a great deal of competition among countries for keeping their business taxes low to lure businesses.
Sure.
Burger King, in its merger with Tim Hortons, was it?
It was Wendy's and Tim Hortons, yeah.
Are you sure it was Wendy's? I thought it was Burger King.
It was Wendy's, yeah. They bought Tim Hortons.
Then Burger King merged with somebody else, and they moved their headquarters to Canada because they got a better deal.
I don't remember who.
Packed up and moved. They were like, "Fuck you."
Oh, it was Taco Bell.
They were getting bent over.
Yep.
And they said, "Okay, up yours."
Same thing happened in China. A lot of companies came back almost to the point of bankruptcy because the communists dictated every aspect of their business. And yes, the labor was cheaper, the products were cheaper, the raw materials for whatever they were doing was cheaper, land was cheaper, etc. But the net returns were less and less and less. And some of them came back and said, that's why you'll see companies that like Blizzard or whatever that, yes, they do operate over there, but they have no physical product. Digital entertainment really has no product, but they're still kowtowing to a lot of the philosophical practices of.
You want to hear a piece of haha? Here's a piece of haha. State of Delaware doesn't have corporate tax.
I'm reading chat. What do you want? But yeah, go ahead.
State of Delaware doesn't have corporate tax.
Really?
That's why you see a lot of credit card companies based out of Delaware. Their headquarters are in Wilmington, Delaware. Because a random American said it was Burger King that merged with Tim Horton.
It's not. It's Wendy's.
I think we need to.
I don't know if now there's a larger conglomerate, but I know it's Wendy's. Trust me, it was big news up here in Canada.
Burger King and Tim Hortons merger. Burger King, Tim Horton merged in an $11 billion deal.
What year is that?
It was in 2016.
Okay. The Wendy's Tim Hortons thing happened 2014.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, I know.
Wendy's and Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons split with Wendy's.
Oh, they did. Shows what I know.
Yeah, Wendy's to spin off the rest of Tim Hortons. It was in 2006.
That they split?
Yep.
No, that must have been when they merged.
Google it.
Regardless.
I've just Googled it, dude.
Oh my God. Google hour. It's not that important. I take you at your word. I'm just mulling over my own
Googled it
misinformation.
to look at the date, because I was pretty sure it was Burger King, because it was big news here, because a lot of people were pissed off that a company the size of Burger King left the U.S.
Well, yeah, we had the same feeling when Wendy's bought up Tim Hortons, and then yeah.
And it's that kind of deal where you see
what's
that
funny
kind of
what's funny is a lot of people, because you probably know the meme, Tim Hortons is in our blood. It's it's a Canadian staple institution at this at this point in our history. I don't know the year off the top of my head. It was recent in fairly recent history, but they lost their supply contract with their bean supplier, and almost immediately McDonald's snapped that shit up. And I don't know if it's the same there as it is up here, but now McDonald's has the right to sell basically the classic Tim Hortons coffee blend here in Canada. I love this shit. I can't stand the new Tim Hortons stuff, but if I have the chance, McDonald's coffee all the way.
I know Miss Jen wants us to get started.
Yeah. Jump in and tell us what you want us to do, Jen. We're just fucking talking.
We've been waiting on your sorry ass.
Grab the reins. Yeah, exactly.
Roar. Uh-oh. Talking about burgers, and it causes people to... Elowen wants burgers.
Hey, if Elowen wants to order burgers, she can order burgers. It's the again, it's one of those delicious luxuries of living in a mega city. We have, dude, I even have marijuana delivered to my fucking apartment door. What a world we live in.
Is it delivered by Duber? Sorry. That was terrible.
No, it's even still with the whole hubbub over legalization up here. It's still, I mean, the drug dealer has just been transferred from quote unquote the black market, which still heavily exists because it's still cheaper and more effective at getting it into your hands than the government is. Surprise, surprise. But basically, the government has just become the drug dealer, and it's become legal, and it's not working. Yeah, when it's fresh, random. But yeah, no, it's a great time to be alive because, like, what do I feel like eating? At the push of a button, I can have food from all around the world at my fucking doorstep. Try that in the rural spaces of North America. It won't happen. Again, it's just back to knowing where this stuff comes from, having experienced it in my life, and respecting it, and being thankful for it existing in my life, not just taking it for granted and going, "Oh, I got a soy latte with cinnamon when I wanted chocolate sprinkles." Oh. Well, yeah, that kind of sucks, but I'm going to enjoy the latte.
I don't. I don't drink coffee. And the last place I would not pay people for coffee other than we have a Keurig because my husband drinks coffee.
Yep.
And that way he can get whatever the hell he wants.
I have a Tassimo, same deal.
Have it.
I also have a French press, and oh my God. That stuff is, I'm a huge coffee aficionado, and that stuff is just, that's bliss.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I drank coffee for a while. It doesn't agree with me.
I think it agrees with me too well.
I wish it did. I love the smell of it, but the taste just kind of off-putting to me.
It's weird because I was the complete opposite up until before I went to college. Anytime I'd wake up, and I have two older sisters, so they were well into university when I was midway through high school. My mother was a big coffee drinker. My father, aunts, uncles, like everybody was a big coffee drinker. I would just, the smell of it would revile me. I would leave the house because I couldn't stand the smell of fresh coffee. And you know, my sisters be like, "Oh, Josh, just wait until you get to." Oh, I just doxed myself. You just go to university or college, and you won't live without it, and blah blah. And sure enough, waking up at 6 a.m. that first college morning, on my first day, the first thing I did was line up at Tim Hortons and get me a pick me up, and it's been a love affair ever since.
I've started drinking coffee in college.
Yeah,
It
really is one of those things.
I quit drinking coffee about a decade later.
Now, what saddens me is I see parents especially, but I see children getting lattes and frappuccinos and shit and all these desserty coffees in Tim Hortons and all these other places, and I'm just like, do you know what you're feeding your child? Like, I hate to be one of those people, but you're giving them drugs.
Well,
Caffeine
what about
is
Coca-Cola,
a hard drug.
Pepsi?
Yeah, no, same thing. I agree wholeheartedly. It's just, you know, coffee people seem to think is this benign thing. It's not. It's a hard drug.
Well, caffeine is in a lot of things.
Yeah,
It's in chocolate, dear, and try to keep kids from eating chocolate. So is Jen going to start the show or what?
She's got to take the reins here because we're just going to keep going and not leave any dead air. But shit, I'm here. I'll talk all afternoon. And do I want McDonald's coffee? I'm not going to say no to a McDonald's coffee. I'm not going to tell you to go get it. My wife is awesome. I'm a huge video gamer, and obviously I like doing streams and stuff when I have the opportunity. So she likes to enhance the experience, shall we say, with no real sexual connotations, that she just wants to, you know, make sure my drinks are topped up, or if I'm hungry, or if I'm getting a little sore because I've been doing a video game marathon on stream or something, come up and give me a little back rub. Like, it's awesome. I couldn't ask for anything better.
You found your own enabler. I like it.
Right?
It works for me.
But I'm a retired chef, so she eats like a queen. Which is good because she can't cook. And I mean, no fault to her own. Some people have certain skills, some people don't, you know. Yes. We just mesh well like that. We pick up the slack where the other lacks.
Jen's asking us for a sound check.
Would I play? There's a fucking icon in the way. When I play it, I can't hear anything.
Neither can I.
Maybe you should take it down and start a new one? Restart it? I don't know. I haven't used StreamYards. I'm an OBS user, so. It looks like she's still in control. And I've always loved your YouTube icon.
Some silly meme I found that I thought described me to the ground.
To the T, yeah. Ever since I first heard you on, I don't know, probably a monkey in the morning or something. It's nice when you can see people that you've hear people you've interacted with in chats in various locations, actually hear them on stream, because you're like, oh, that's what this person sounds like. You can kind of get a little bit of indication on how they're speaking in chat, because communication through text, there's no gravitas, there's no inflections, there's no
very rarely
tone. Yeah, very rarely.
Some people write with a cadence, but it's not the same as verbal.
Yeah.
Della's asking a good question as to whether Jen needs to add herself to the call so that we can
actually. That's a very good question. I don't even know.
So that we can actually.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, so is that what it is?
I think it probably was.
Okay, let me, sorry, this is my first time doing it. So let me play the sound in the background and see if.
Very soft.
Very soft? I've got it on full.
Opera.
Oh, this is the, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I can't make out anything. I can just hear.
I do remember some of the things he talked about. So if you want me to just jump right into that, I mean.
Okay.
Because I think, like Prospero here in Ontario, we have, municipal police, and then we have provincial police, the Ontario Provincial Police,
Right.
and then we have federal police, which are the Mounties.
Right.
Somewhere like Alberta, they don't have a provincial police force, and one of the topics this guy was bringing up was they wanted to have their own provincial police, and that's something that I get really behind, because I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't they? The Mounties should be to use to equate them to like your FBI. They
Right.
deal with federal things, crimes that happen in multiple states, multiple provinces, and deal with bigger issues, whereas the provincial police deal with provincial matters, because we still believe in these states' rights, provincial rights kind of ideas, which leads me to another thing he brought up, which was he wants full provincial state autonomy. Something I'm not really for, but I do believe in certain rights that a state or province should be able to have.
Rights not reserved unto the federal government are reserved unto the provinces.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a federal government should do things on a federal level, like foreign relations, securing the national borders, running, the high courts, these kinds of things. They shouldn't be dealing with how provinces run themselves.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I'll tell you why. The United States, unfortunately, serves as a model for this. Our Civil War was predicated rather largely on the concept of states' rights. Even though slavery is the topic over which the states were arguing for states' rights, it was about states' rights.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was paid to, rather in a rather costly fashion.
Yeah.
And ever since then, a state. Now, we still have a certain degree of independence. I mean, the whole purpose of there being the individual states in the United States was they were individual laboratories of democracy. So that Colorado can legalize pot. That does not mean that Colorado's legalization of pot is recognized by any other state. If you take pot into Oklahoma, they're going to bust your ass in Oklahoma. We do have some autonomy, but the federal government has reserved so much power for itself that a state can't get rid of a federal program.
Yeah.
Like if they look at EEOC, the Equal Opportunity, EOE, however it's put together, but the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Yeah.
They can't say, we think hiring based on race, which that oddly enough is, but for the betterment of certain races and not one, or gender or whatnot, is a good idea. It's federal law. You can't violate these hiring rights. The state can't say, well, that sucks. We had an example of Arizona trying to enforce immigration law that the federal government was not enforcing, and they were slapped down in court for it. Because immigration, as a matter applies, as the matter applies, only rests within the purview of the federal government. So you're going to get caught on shoals of what can and what can't be done. This is a question I have. How much autonomy does Alberta have over establishing their own provincial?
Doing so, we were very successful in invoking.
That's better, Jen.
With regards
Okay.
to
Yay!
speech.
I can do it now.
We can hear it now.
I
think that's one of the delineations we need to come together, and if we're trying to improve our respective political systems, we should start discussing, because it's obviously not working. Because right now, if we were to compare Ontario and Alberta's autonomy, The scales are so heavily weighted in Ontario's favor.
Well-
It's disgusting. It
well-
disgusts me as a resident of Ontario.
Okay, here's the question. Here's the question I have: is Alberta barred from creating their own provincial police?
A contract with the Mounties, which is up in a year and a half.
So, in other
That's
words,
why it's being. That's
the
why it was being
Mounties, the
discussed.
Mounties have been a rent-a-provincial police force,
Yeah, because there was
as well as serving as the federal police force in the area. So
Yes.
they've worn two hats.
Yes, in multiple provinces, not just Alberta.
Right.
It has to do with population, and since there's been a huge population boom over there,
Is
respectively.
Funding
Yeah.
for provincial police solely gathered within the province, or is it fed through Ottawa?
It's fed through Ottawa.
So it's
So the money that would be allocated
Ontario
for
would
the
be paying
provincial,
in part for the provincial police for Manitoba, the provincial
theoretically,
police
not in practice with how our equalization payments work, but
Okay.
yeah, theoretically.
So there is
So their contract would be up,
so there's
and
federal subsidy, in other words, for the provincial police departments.
yes,
Okay.
most definitely.
But that also stands for Ontario, as in federal tax dollars collected from BC or Saskatchewan or something are in part used to fund Ontario's provincial police.
Correct.
Damnation. We're coming up on a damned election and my phone won't stop ringing.
Yeah, you guys are having an election.
Yeah, Virginia local, state elections, Commonwealth elections. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the 2020s, and I'm like,
No, see, we elect
everywhere.
we elect our governors for 5-year terms, I think, or 4-year terms, but it's on an off year.
Right.
So we have to vote this year for
Even though your federal political cycle seems to be 24/7 these days, which is fucking maddening.
it's a little confusing, but as far as our state, the legislature, we'll be voting for state, the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
Only for the state of Virginia. I don't know how many states are on skewed years, because it'll confuse people, and it drives me nuts because it always means that back to back, we're stuck with this nonsense.
Yeah.
It's like we have 3 years in a row where the shit's going on because we have this stuff for House of Delegates. Then we have the federal next year, which will also include House of Representatives, federal House of Representatives in the Senate for those who are up for a Senate term, because those are every 6 years. And then the next year, I think we vote for governor.
Busy.
Yeah, I know. It just means the phone rings all the fucking time.
Yeah.
The minute it starts in like late August. Were you going to support the Republican National Campaign Committee? And it's like, okay, number one, I'm not going to be voting for anything federal until next year, so shove it up your ass. But then I get all these calls from Virginia trying to get me to vote for this, that, or the other nitwit to sit in the House of Delegates.
Okay, so do you have the timestamps queued up, or do you want to just play something?
Okay. So
We'll tackle it bit by bit.
Ask a question.
okay, let me just.
If not,
Well, no, we don't do Q&A yet. It's just speaking. It's open floor. So there's one minute.
So
1 minute
take into
open
account,
floor
guys,
for
this
everybody.
is
Everybody gets 1
a
minute to
room
speak,
with like
basically,
46
around
to
that.
48
I'm
people.
gonna get my phone out here.
Skip ahead another 4 or 5 minutes, because I know that they keep bringing callers, and every time they're like, "Oh, I just wanted to ask questions."
There was a constitution,
And they finally got fed up and were like, "Okay, fine, we'll take questions."
Has all been
There's a lot of people were
So
there to
we,
learn
as
about
a
what they were
sovereign
talking about.
people, have to group together in large numbers and take that to
I
the
think
government
that's about right.
with a constitution,
Yeah.
which is for the people by the people. What Alberta is
Now, this guy's a little
attempting to do
quacky,
right
for the
now
record.
is set the
Yeah, but I
foundation,
mean,
set
if you want to pause it
precedent
for a
right now.
second,
So here in Alberta,
I do agree with the idea of a constitution by the people for the people, because we don't have one here in Canada. We have our Bill of Rights.
It's tough with a parliamentary system because it requires addressing the parliamentary rules if they're anything like they are in Great Britain. laws passed by a parliament are not necessarily binding upon the next parliament. They can just get rid of that law. That's where
Yes and no. We could. I don't remember the technical term offhand, but we could enshrine it to be a forever sort of lasting, forever using the term loosely, but a long-term
constitution. Yeah.
constitution. Yeah.
In other words, get all the individual provinces to ratify the document.
Sign on. Yeah,
that
exactly.
stands as the Constitution.
My problems with that are, I mean, given the current political discourse and climate, it's like, who's going to be writing this shit? Who's going to be like, are we going to have a vote on it? I don't want to vote on it because there's a lot of stupid people. I was saying to Jen earlier, like, I want intelligent, informed people to be developing this, who are not in the politosphere, to sort of have them removed to have that sort of for the people, by the people mentality behind it, because a lot of the people who drafted yours at the time weren't politicians. They got into politics after it.
Okay. They were. They locked themselves in a room and wrote a constitution. Nobody knew what was going on.
Right.
We had Articles of Confederation.
Yeah.
They wrote a constitution completely replacing the Articles of Confederation, really without a whole lot of public participation. There are people who look back at that and go, well, wasn't that an interesting coup d'etat? It was a necessary one, because you do not want people not schooled in the philosophy of individual rights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be engaged
that's
in
what I was
writing
trying to say,
a constitution. And right now, the political climate in Canada, especially in Toronto and some of your big cities that are utterly illiberal, they're terribly regressive left. You're going to have people want to enshrine hate speech laws.
Yep.
You're going to have a great number of people who are going to functionally say all of your rights come from the government. That they're not innate. And I think the thing to do, because you're dealing with Trudeau in a minority government now,
yes,
is pick off politicians around the edges.
Yeah.
Pick them off around the edges and get them behind the notion of writing a constitution, fully participated in by all the parties, by provincial representatives, so that there is a group of people that at least the provinces agree on, that are present and equal partners with the politicians that function on a federal level, and hammer out something like this. It would be like the way when we pass amendments to our Constitution, first the amendment is drafted by the federal government, and then each individual state house has to take it up for consideration, and it has to pass with 3/4 majority, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
doesn't have to be 100%. And in that regard, if the Constitution that comes down out of Ottawa, let's say, because you know that's where they're going to gather to do this, they're not going to do it.
Well, they'd have to,
Saskatoon. They're they're not. They might do it in PEI in the summertime.
Beautiful country, but yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, because it would
have to be.
Let's go to Martha's Vineyard for a couple weeks and write up a constitution.
Then, but in effect, it would have to be dealt with in our political center, which is Ottawa.
And then have it go to the provinces for debate and discussion.
Sure, yeah.
And then it's up to the people within the provinces to lobby their provincial governments for the ability to comment during that period. Now, you elect your provincial representatives. That has to be kept in mind if you're moving forward with the notion of a constitution. Your best bet is to try to do something like this. I mean, there's nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
Yeah.
And now is a good time because Trudeau and his ilk are weak. They just
Both parties are weak,
Mhm.
incredibly weak.
well, you have
mystifies me.
You have split voting on the so-called right to some
And
extent.
on the left, and on
Yeah.
the left,
Mhm.
we have smaller parties, yeah. But I mean,
But they
to say-
dilute.
They don't really.
They
don't really
diluted
split the vote.
Trudeau's power in this. I mean,
Oh, a lot, yeah.
but it also diluted the ability to completely unseat him. That kind of that's one of the problems with multi-party. It is very robust and very dynamic in many ways, and then it also you can end up shooting yourself in the foot with it too. I mean, I think you could do it, but I see too many people that are in quotes conservatives now that buy into bullshit like hate speech, and buy into a top-down view of governance and a strangulation of the rights of the individual.
Yeah.
It's in the American right, like we were talking before, authoritarians versus individual liberty supporters, and trying to tap into a well of small L libertarianism. In Canada, you're going to get full-throated support in the plains for something like that because you guys aren't the big city folk. And you will, I think, to some extent in the Maritimes. But, Quebec's going to be a thorn in the side.
Yeah, well, they already
Well,
are.
I mean, yeah,
And
they don't want to be a part of Canada to begin with.
And
so.
parts of BC are going to be dicks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Vancouver's going to be just a big cesspit of Toronto West. But I think it could be done, and it's certainly a better solution than Wexit.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wexit won't happen. It can't.
No,
happen.
it won't, and it can't.
It's geographically impossible. You have rivers, but they go into other provinces, right? You have a shared border with the U.S. that you could use, but you know how far away the Missouri River is? Waterways are still important. Major hubs of transportation are important. And a way to get stuff in and out where you can't be blockaded.
Well, they do touch on that, and just to sort of reverse it a little bit, because I am familiar with the material we've been presented. I listened to it a couple times. The guy is speaking specifically for this to be an Alberta thing, and I'm like, first of all, that's a little selfish. This should be a Canada-wide thing.
Yes,
this should be something that all of Canada should be coming together to strive towards, but also that they bring up that there's some sort of UN convention that if a country, if a place becomes a country within a country, they can't be landlocked by the former host country, and that there has to be some concessions made or blah 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 blah. And I'm like, please try to get the UN to do anything. Fuck off with that stuff.
it's not going to happen. It's not like you're Eritrea, okay?
But I appreciate the fact that you brought up and touched on that, because yes, you do need, especially with something that has such a big trade in oil, you do have to have access to the oceans.
Mm-hmm.
The pipelines alone, yes, they're very good and very beneficial to the commodity, but it's limiting.
You need a year.
But you need
what's called a year-round warm water port.
Yeah, and that would be BC.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they also touch on. They asked the question. I wasn't really sure on this myself, in that because the pipeline out that goes west, I believe that becomes property of the province.
Indigenous.
What was that, Jen?
Yeah, that too. But they're trying to gear it towards the indigenous people a lot. Like, there's a lot of talk about gearing it towards them, because a lot of the places where the pipelines need to go is going through their land, and a lot of the conflict is government interference in that. Because we've been doing our own talks with them for the longest time, and we've actually offered to let them run it from their side if they want to do it from their side because they're concerned about the environment or anything like that, we're more than willing to back them on it. Because infrastructural wise, it's good for their communities. Like they get screwed over quite a lot from a lot of the environmentalist groups.
Yeah.
And the oil companies aren't clean either. Their fingers have been dirty before too. So it's understandable that they're shy of the talks. But Trudeau and his government has made it so much more difficult, and NDP has made it so much more difficult. And that's where a lot of them are trying to gear it towards. We're just like, listen, we want you guys to have the infrastructure to take care of your own people so that you don't have to rely on dirtbags like the oil companies or the government.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's a thing where with them, a lot of them are more than keen to backstab the whiteys. And this is a bad thing in their community that's perpetuated by a lot of these anti-oil groups. And unfortunately, our oil groups, like I said, historically, they've done some naughty things too. So it's understandable that it's easy to,
Well, they did it with a wink and a nod of the federal government too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's hand in glove, unfortunately.
And more scandals of those backroom deals being exposed, but nobody seems to care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if our election is any sort of indication, nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it was a quote unquote blackface scandal or actual backroom deals.
What do you mean, purchasing the press?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purchasing the press, literal backroom deals with companies for bribes, for favors.
I was waiting,
like actual quid pro quo.
I was waiting to see if some of the, in quotes, journalistic organizations involved in this we're going to change their name to Pravda or Izvestia, because good God, that was absolute. That should be a scandal. But here's the problem: you don't have a First Amendment like we do.
Exactly.
Which would prohibit the government from interfering.
And in relation to our talking about a Canadian constitution,
not that it's held here.
I think that the American Constitution is a good frame to build from, because the original ideas, the root ideas, are very simple, very individual.
It's not that complex a document, really. I mean,
you have you have the right to self-preservation and the right to speech. Okay, yeah, these are very fine and very root rights that any individual has and should be upheld and protected by the government. Now, whether or not you want to expand on the idea of the right to self-preservation being you now have the right to own a gun, we can have that discussion. But as far as the root ideas, you have the right to A, B, C. That's fine in my books, and I think that that's a good place to start.
Give a hint to the people who write this stuff. The way our Bill of Rights is written is in the negative, which is very common in law. If you read any Supreme Court cases, you'll see a lot of it.
It has to be written
Congress
in the positive.
Shall make no law. No, it needs to be written in the negative, because this is a charter of negative rights applied to the government. Congress shall make no law limiting the free practice of speech, assembly, the press, religion. It's important that it be worded that way, because it is a complete full stop. You can't do that. Supreme Court unanimously decided that there's no such thing as hate speech in the United States.
Yeah.
Because
those three words shall not infringe. Full stop.
Well, that's the Second Amendment. Congress.
No, but I'm just saying,
Congress
like the wording of it. Yeah.
Congress shall make no law prohibiting free speech and the exercise thereof. No law. Not hate speech law, not hurt feelings law, not a goddamn pronoun law. We've seen it happen within states, and it's all whether somebody can get on the docket and run it all the way up to the Supreme Court. I mean, that can take years.
Yep.
But when the Supreme Court views the constitutionality of something like that, it's generally a permanent view. It can change. I mean, when the court changes significantly in another 20 years, it could change. I mean, we had 2 seminal cases in the right to bear arms that the court said that Washington, D.C. couldn't prohibit a man from owning a weapon, and the Chicago couldn't. And then both those locales decided to pass laws that they don't prohibit it, but they make it functionally impossible.
Yeah.
Because they're dirt bags.
Yeah, they're subverting a higher law by.
Well, they're not. They're end arounding it.
Yeah,
by they're not
so
in
much red
violation
tape
of the
around
court, but yeah, you can own a weapon, but you're not allowed to own ammunition. Something like that. I mean, we've actually heard that out of candidates. Maybe what we should do is bar ammunition. And it's like, man, you're a special kind of stupid. Do you know how easy it is to make your own bullets?
I was just thinking that my dad does that too.
Some casings, some gunpowder. Okay.
All somebody has to do is open a tool and die shop and create casings. Somebody says, what's that for? You say, jewelry.
Jewelry.
Prove it isn't.
It's a special
Another guy's
order,
making what looks like blasting caps. And it's not. It's your powder charge. And then, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard Polydub actually knocked over an entire can full of casings one time when he was on stream.
I heard that.
But he reuses casings, picks through them, makes sure there's no deformity. It's commonly done. So you can bar ammunition all you want, the manufacturer of it, whatever. But of course, that's also going to get into people who make ammunition are going to buy off all the congressmen that say, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Oh, wait, here's a check for what? That's terrible. I think it's in violation of the Constitution.
Yep. But, the people who are supposed to be enforcing these things are the people who are using them.
Yes. It's a thorny thing to think of a Constitution being written in the present day.
Yeah. It's just sad that Western governments are now, they used to be there to serve the people. Now they are mommy and daddy dictating to the people.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to use the R word, but revolution is seems to be the only logical recourse. I don't want it to happen. I don't think it'll happen.
It won't, and too many people will die and it won't succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Idiots in this country talk about we can raise arms against government. And it's like, yeah. Let me give you a hint as to why the American Revolution worked. 6 weeks by boat. That's why it worked.
Yeah.
If they wanted to replace troops that had
logistics were impossible.
Mm-hmm. It was logistically impossible. If you want to see what you think a modern revolution might look like,
it's terrifying because everybody has the internet.
It's even worse than the French Revolution.
Generously, let's say you had 1,000 people, being generous here, and you started an uprising. They could have a military force of 10,000 troops at that doorstep in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary, but it's
also take a look though at what the French Revolution
use this. What I want to say to this guy in this stream was, use the system that is already there to the best of your ability to try to get some of your ideas through. Because I think you're asking for everything at once, and you might be trying to highball so that they'll come meet you halfway, but that it's not going to work like that. You have to slowly, methodically get an idea in and use the process already established to help change the process.
You mentioned 10,000 forces. federal troop force showing up at the doorstep of the Union Hall where the 1,000 have gathered.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even bother. They'd drone them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depends on the level of threat, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, we're even at the point where
If
they
they
don't
knew
need
they
to
were
put
armed,
people into harm's way
but they knew they were armed
and ready for a fight. Yeah.
and ready for a fight, they'd drone them.
Oh yeah, they would just
In
there
a
wouldn't be a
York
Waco
minute.
anymore. They would just buy.
Now Waco was. No, don't even get me started on Waco.
I'm just using it as a symbol.
But what I'm talking about is not just that. I'm talking about, let's say there was a successful coup, an overthrow in Ottawa,
Sure.
and the major leaders are all in prison. What is going to happen to them? What's going to be done? Are they going to be put on trial, or are they going to be murdered?
Well, they are. We do have a strong French presence, so
what do you think is going to happen?
I'd say guillotine.
Mm-hmm. And then you know what's
Execution
going to
in the
happen?
street.
Their families are going to be guillotined. And then anybody that speaks up against guillotining these people is going to be guillotined. And then you're going to get a Robespierre in charge. And then anybody that looks at you funny is going to be guillotined.
Mhm.
Until one day, Robespierre loses out to another faction and he gets guillotined. And you take a very prosperous, very useful country and you shove it back 100 years.
Yeah, you turn it into a shithole country.
You turn it into France. And you end up with Napoleon. How's that sound? You end up with.
I
Joe,
mean, I'm
you end
actually
up with
okay
Joe
with that because
St-
I believe that I can be the next Canadian Napoleon.
Do you know what a shitbag Napoleon was? I mean, do
I
you
could
have
be
any
a
idea?
shitbag.
He's terribly romanticized in the West.
Mhm.
The man was
Yeah.
a horror.
Yeah.
He's a fucking
Well,
horror.
most-
He reinstated slavery in Haiti. It's why Haiti had the second republic in the New World. They found out the hard way that you do that to a bunch of people, they'll fucking kill you in your sleep.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You turn civilized people into barbarians in a very short period of time.
Oh yeah. That's why I would, with the whole wexit thing, I'm like, just take back the reins a little bit. Let's try the communication route first, and let's try to use the system. Let's try to get people who are
Not just try, you must.
Yeah. Let's get people who are ignorant to what is the facts are and what's going on. Let's get them educated, and let's try to bring them to our side with speech.
And not be hyperbolic. That's the issue. There's some people who are being hyperbolic about, all of Ontario fucking hates the West.
Elwin,
Well, no,
I would be a fantastic dictator. Don't you worry.
Everybody says that.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it.
But, you'll find out that you'll have to hire somebody to taste your food.
Yeah, of course.
And who wants to live like that? Who wants to live like that?
Of course. And no one person should have that much power. Like it never works. It's never worked.
Bad things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the American Revolution is a one-off civil war that happened to come out in our favor because of geography.
Yeah.
And the fact that all of Parliament didn't think that the U.S. demands were wrong. They didn't. And it was costly. The War of 1812 was completely retarded. I mean, that was an example of King George being talked into the regent being talked into something particularly stupid, and it fucking damn near cost England Waterloo. Because they got a bunch of their generals and soldiers killed over here for no good reason. And, it put paid to it. They finally signed a peace with us. Because they didn't. People like to think the American Revolution ended when Cornwallis got on a boat. It didn't. It didn't end until the end of the War of 1812. Because England had never recognized us as a country. Isn't that a particularly interesting little thing? Stubborn fuckers, I swear to God.
That was the other thing that these guys were doing that was pissing me off a lot. Was like half of them are like, fuck America, because like you guys have screwed us over for business deals before with our oil before, and I'm like, listen, this is another country you're dealing with. Of course they're going to try to screw you over because they want to have a better deal than you. It just means you got to get good scrub.
Yeah, but also,
Huh.
what's your population again?
4
Exactly.
million.
I mean, I hate to be rude and jingoistic, but go ahead, try to fuck us.
That's just basically what I've been telling them. I'm like, listen, if you know that like half of our headquarters are going down to the US right now, you now have an outlet that allows you to speak to the US. And if you can use that outlet, they can put pressure on the guys in Ottawa. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's still a lot more than what we've got.
Don't say fuck us, petition us for statehood.
Right?
Just,
Right?
there's some perks that'll come your way, and then there'll be a whole lot of not perks.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of flyover country, as it's called by the coastal elites. It's not dissimilar to Canada. You're out in
No, not at
Alberta.
all.
You're wondering whether anybody gives a flying fuck about you in Ottawa. There are plenty of people out in the so-called flyover country that knows that DC doesn't pay any attention to them until it's time
That's
for a
actually what
federal
brought
election.
Jen and I together to talk about this, is because of my location in the political center of Canada, which is southern Ontario, and her quote unquote flyover status in Alberta. There is that disconnect. It is a lot to do with the federal government, the media, just not talking about these things and bringing it to the forefront of discussion.
I'll tell you who's my money's on surviving longer if there's an EMP attack on North America.
Mm.
The Albertans.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people who live out in the hinterlands, as they're viewed, the people in the flyover country, they're the ones who know how to hunt. They're the ones that know how to fish.
We're very self-sufficient.
Oh yeah, you can live off the land. Yeah.
Yeah, Toronto will be at each other's throats. I mean, people will just be killing each other in the streets because they fucking can.
Thankfully, I have an exit strategy, and I've been in my younger years spent a lot of time in the country and spent a lot of time on walkabout in the Canadian wilderness. I can, thankfully, I know how to take care of myself. The
you can cook.
Cripple status might hurt a little bit, but
yes, but you can cook. I mean, if you presented yourself at a camp of hunters and fishers, fishermen and things like that.
Hey, bitches, I got spices and salt.
Well, no, it's just that you would be very, very helpful at running the mess.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. It's
yeah.
We all have certain skill sets as long as we're willing not to look at those people who are doing the hard work and look down at them. Yeah. That's the problem with the elites in the cities. They look at those of us who do not participate in their rare air art museum land, where they understand all the best art and all the best music, and they read all the best books, and they don't know a single person that voted for Donald Trump.
Well, here's the thing. There's a
white
real
man has no connection to land.
There's a real reason why I go all daddy's girl, and it's the single fact is that's most of what he does on his spare time is look up like survival shit. And I'm like, he's got a library in his basement that I'm just like, in case of a zombie apocalypse, which I kind of feel like we're kind of in one right now. Anyway,
yeah.
Justin's left eyebrow does not disagree.
I look at that shelving unit and I look at all that information. I'm like, you know what? I've got a lot right there that a lot of people don't have, and it explains how to make weapons like bows and arrows, how to actually fletch them, how to actually hunt, how to track, how to use vegetable, like things that you wouldn't know to eat in the wild. And, I mean, I wouldn't go on as an expert. If I didn't know what it was, I'm not putting it in my mouth. But just having him there, knowing that he knows that kind of stuff, I'm like, I'm a little bit ahead of the game. In terms of anything else, good luck. I'd have to restart learning archery again, because that's, it's
can you thread a needle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clothes are going to need to be repaired. Yes, it sounds like traditional women's work, but nobody gives a shit. If you're eating and if you're surviving, you will do what it takes to do that. There are people who do not have very high survival skills who live in the city. Twitter goes down and they lose their fucking shit. Now, we all hate it when Twitter goes down, and we're kind of mildly inconvenienced. And then we think, well, there are books in the house. Yeah. I could do something else. I'd go outside for a walk. These people are like, how in the world am I going to tell everybody what I'm thinking and what I'm eating?
Because my emotions are so upset right now. How can I tell people about them?
How am I going to eat if I can't contact Uber Eats?
Well, that's it. I don't know how to cook. Trust me, like Ellen might not know how to cook. She'd learn.
Mhm.
You know, and even badly cooked food is food.
She doesn't need to. She's got me.
Right, but I'm saying on her
Yeah,
own,
yeah.
she'd learn. We all have the capability to learn.
Yeah.
My problem is what books have to come with me if I have to go 30 miles west to where the deer are and the better fishing is and that kind of thing. But I mean, I know people who would have my back who live out in the country and that I could do something to help them one way or the other. I mean, you could teach me, even at my advanced age, how to tan a hide. I mean, you could teach me this. The original Boy Scout manual from like the 1920s is like a survivalist guide.
Yeah.
And that used to be one of the things that was recommended, just to have one of those, because as far as doing a lot of stuff, if the power grid were to be interrupted for a lengthy period of time, you might need to do some of these things. You might find a need. There's a fuck ton of information. It's a little scary to think of ever having to like actually rely on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't like doing these doomsday dystopian scenarios in my head. But I do know for a fact that there are a fuck ton of city dwellers who are going to be up shit creek because they're the people that believe that chickens come from magical chicken boxes. They couldn't slaughter a chicken to save their lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Literally to save their lives. And some of them would be so unwilling to learn because they've lived in that rare air of competence. They believe in their own competence. I mean, it's Dunning-Kruger is what it is. I'm smart enough. I'll do just great. I know where my deficiencies are and how much I would have to be taught, and that I would be a liability as an older person. But I also know that folks who live in the flyover country aren't going to look at the old people and say, well, you're a drag. We need to off you. What do you think they're going to do in the cities?
Well, it's like even some of the things that you used to use in the past, like they're still valid. They're still valid because they work without electricity. So like I hold on to my dad for that very reason. I'm like, you know how to use this stuff. Teach me a little bit at a time, just in case, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it he might leave to me. A lot of it he's probably going to sell. If he knows I'm probably just going to kill myself using something, he'll sell it. But
Yeah.
but you know, he's taught me a lot of stuff. I think the only thing he's ever avoided me with is propane, and I'm like, well, Dad, I understand why, but you know, at some point your daughter needs to learn how propane works so I don't blow up a house.
Is your dad the Canadian Hank Hill?
Yes. I have told him before that I have used them before. Like, you know, when he's not supervising, I have used them before, but
Yeah.
you know, it's just like using I used to make my own jewelry, so it's like telling him like, yeah, Dad, I've had to use a torch before.
Yeah.
You know what that's attached to?
I can solder. The other thing is if you can solder, you can help make a still.
Right.
Because, well, no, the fascinating thing is I was talking to a friend a long time about this, that if something major were to occur, the state I live in has plentiful whitetails. So we got deer all over the place. We have a lot of tributaries, and we can grow damn near any crop because we grow a fuck ton of corn in this state. Not like Nebraska, but for the location of the state, plenty to feed livestock.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, Southerners ate Johnny cakes and a lot of cornbread because wheat doesn't grow in warm weather.
Yeah.
We have rice in the South.
Yeah, you guys are a lot more humid than we are too.
Yes.
Where I am, it's so dry. Like, I mean, you do grow grains up here, like lots of canola, lots of, you know, you're not going to get corn out here, or if you do, it's going to be really small.
Right.
And it's the same with like certain nut trees. Like you don't grow nut trees out here unless it's like a pine nut or something. But we do a lot of ranching, so you know it's interchangeable with your ranchers. Like you know, you have your cows here, and then next year they'll move them to another field, and they'll probably grow something in that field.
Right.
But for us, it's we're actually very, we could technically run on our own. Not that we would want to, because we do like doing business, but we kind of have a little bit of everything here. Like
You could, but it would be a full century or more step back.
Oh yeah.
And you don't want that.
No, we don't want to turn into Hutterites here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nobody wants that.
No. I like my internet too. Like, I mean, I like going out to the mountains, but I like my internet. So it's like,
I think you'd be surprised at how quickly our power grid would come back in one form or another, because there might be a delay. But there are plenty of people still alive who ran coal powered plants, hydro plants, things that there are trained technician types. I'm not talking about the management of the power companies. I'm not sure many of them have any idea what they're doing. But I think a great number of the people that do the nuts and bolts work, the blue collar, as they're called.
Yeah.
They'll get stuff up and going again if they're not interfered with by a bunch of suits.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
That and the military is given a fair bit of training, and they are particularly good at disaster relief and organization. And it never hurts to have the guys with the large, scary guns do some population control if you've got a problem. You've seen looting and stuff that has occurred after hurricanes. When Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida, I mean, it tore the fuck out of that area.
And now that you mention it, that's actually really funny, because a lot of people thought that we were going to do that in like the major cities in Alberta. I'm like, no, we don't do that here. We're conservatives. We don't burn down our own shit because it costs us money.
Yeah, you have to rebuild it. But one of the funniest pictures I saw was a National Guardsman caught a guy looting, and he was standing in the parking lot. The guy is on the ground, and this guy has his boot on his neck and a rifle pointed at his head. And it was like, this is why you don't loot when the National Guard is there to try to help move trees and get identify where the live power lines are so the power company can come and take care of that, and to protect people's property. I don't like to see the military in action in Kaunas, all right? That doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. But, I mean, the National Guard can move the fuck out of people in an emergency if they need to. They handled one of the evacuation of Galveston that was after Katrina. Can't remember the name of the hurricane. By, people get stuck on the highway. The gridlock's amazing. So people were going to run out of gas. Well, the National Guard guys were running up and down the sides of the road carrying gas.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we need them to do. And that's really all they're there to do. Fortunately, it doesn't look like the military is itching to have a coup anywhere in the West. They're kind of more like, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes when people get all apocalyptic about what would happen if this, that, and the other, there's going to be trouble, and it will be in the high population density areas.
For sure.
Like you said, people go apeshit, burn their own shit down.
Yep.
And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. If you've got it against the man, why didn't you go to the man's neighborhood and burn the man's shit to the ground? No, you burnt your own stuff. Because potato.
We're not exactly dealing with the Albert Einsteins of the world here.
No. And there are always older people in these communities. I remember the Baltimore riots. It was pretty funny because there's this older black dude came out, and he was like, I just bought this damn Cadillac. I'm going to move it about 10 blocks over because these bastards are going to burn it and wreck it. He said, look at them. They're burning the only drugstore we have in the neighborhood to the ground. To prove what point?
No point, just free shit.
Well, it wasn't even free shit, man. They set fire to that, and then they cut the fire hoses.
They didn't take anything?
Well, they did some looting, but they set fire
there you
to
go.
it.
Yeah.
But they cut the fire hoses.
At that point, yeah. At that point, it's just malicious fucking...
Well, that's when you're wondering if Darwin's going to kick up a little windstorm for you, and the whole damn city can burn to the ground. There you go. Very well done. Nice of you to play.
I wish we could allow a little Darwinism to play out these days.
Oh
Anyway.
yes, absolutely, 100%. I mean, a lot of and I know functional knows this
Thanos was
already.
right.
He was right. But I mean, a lot of that last week was what was coming out from us was more like, we're not going to burn our shit down. But a lot of the angry people were like, yeah, we are going to burn your shit down. That's what all the oil rig stuff is like. We kind of we just want self-sufficiency in our own country.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what
I
a
mean,
concept.
representation would be a good start.
I know, right?
Like Prospero, both our House and Senate are the representation is purely based on population.
Yes, ours is too. Well, the Senate isn't. Ours is.
Exactly. The Senate isn't, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, there should be 2 representatives from BC, 2 from Alberta, 2 from Ontario, 2 from Quebec, and that should be, it shouldn't be 20 some odd from Ontario 40 some odd from Ontario and 6 from Alberta.
Yeah, well, you've got to realize a lot of people were reluctant to ever copy our system because fuck us. Like you said, Jen, they're the fuck America.
Oh, jeez, there's so many of them, but they're so dumb.
Well, it's all right. I mean,
they don't realize a little tablespoon of America could actually help them.
Oh, that's.
I think that's a Canadian pride thing.
It's fine. We can build another wall, y'all.
No, we don't want another
We don't
wall.
want another wall. In fact,
no, that's what I'd say to them. That's all right. We
border thing post 9/11 took, most Canadians by shock, and most Americans who lived along the border by shock, because we're like, but why? Like we don't really have. I understand why. But it's also still a bit of a shock because it isn't a clear and present danger.
It was tough to watch those hijackers come in through Canada.
Oh yeah.
That was really tough to watch.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
And that caused a lot of people to go, God damn it, of all the borders we worried about, this wasn't the one, and they exploited that.
Well, because
a Canadian, how do you think I feel knowing that my government okayed these people to move in here from the first place?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't.
And then for them to do what they did and just go, I
never heard anybody, hand to God, I never heard anybody say this is Canada's fault.
No.
Because we knew whose fault it was.
Yeah.
I know that there was some angst about that because it was, especially from Toronto, because of the size of Toronto and the fact that you're basically a duplicate of New York in many ways, that holy shit, they could have as easily picked Toronto to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I think there was thoughts that they were going to.
Well, there was good call for it at most of the major capitals in Europe, and obviously, particularly Toronto, because of it being a large city. New York isn't our capital, but it certainly is the financial center.
Yeah, we were worried about it.
The poster boy for America.
Yes,
we were worried about it too, because if they'd done it to Calgary, or it was mostly Calgary more than Edmonton, things would have been really, really bad, because this is like headquarters for it was the #1 headquarters for most of the oil companies in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. They didn't do what. If I were going to instill terror into people, I mean genuine terror.
We're going dark, people.
Paralytic terror. It wouldn't be fly planes into buildings.
No.
It would be poison the water supply in Des Moines, Iowa. It would be blow up an oil refinery, blow up another oil refinery, take out a power plant, all that. It would have been a multi-phased over a sequence of days and weeks, hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. If you want to panic a population,
surgical strikes, yeah.
They were looking to make a statement, and they got.
I mean, say what you want about the 9/11 hijackers. They got the targets right.
They got their targets right, and they got lucky. It's purported that Osama bin Laden said he never thought the buildings would come down. That was just a bonus.
Yeah.
It wasn't the intent.
And it's terrible. Like, I don't want anyone in chat thinking, you know, like I'm
not
a
endorsing this, and I still
what's
think
his name, Hassan Piker here saying, you know, those Mujahideen, they're great guys.
well,
I'm not saying any of
Bill
that.
Maher got in trouble, you know, for saying you can't blame him on running a successful operation, can you? Because they were successful.
If you don't respect your opponent and where they actually succeed, there's no hope for you.
But even schmooze like me, sitting at home watching this unfold, fuck, man, I wish I could erase that memory. After neither of the towers had come down yet, and my mom was still alive. And I looked at her and I was like, what the fuck is that guy's name? Osama, somebody or another. I said, that's who's behind this. He's been a thorn in our ass forever. Because I wasn't as much of a news junkie at the time. But my mind went immediately to who has done the most talking, the most bitching, the most griping, and who has been involved peripherally in the other stuff. Because, you know, the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, functionally the same network of operators.
Yeah.
And we were given ample signs, ample warnings. The foreshadowing could not have been clearer. But that's all in hindsight. You know, everybody got up on a sunny Tuesday and thought, hey, nice day. And then it all went to shit.
I was on my way to college, yeah.
We were very, very fortunate that the death toll at the World Trade Center was, this sounds insane, as low as it was.
Yeah.
Because those buildings filled to capacity. The two buildings filled to capacity, plus all the restaurants, the stores, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
On any given day, there could be 50,000 people there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, but the evacuation that was done by the New York City Fire Department and the police and the Port Authority was fucking extraordinary. You know, absolutely extraordinary. The other thing,
no doubt. Yeah.
The other thing that was, man, another bit of serendipity was where the plane struck the Pentagon. That area of the Pentagon had recently been reinforced. There had been remodeling done through there, and
well, they're also lucky the plane didn't directly hit.
Yeah, it skipped just before it hit on the bank that comes down to the Pentagon. But, man, boo.
No, BP, we're still kind of talking about it. We're just sort of seeing where the flow takes us with what we're talking about.
Just give me a second.
Sure.
Been kind of not so much
back then
as solutions, possibly.
Yeah, listening to what people have
grievances
to say,
and you know that. I mean, if people are that aggrieved, it pays to listen to what they're saying, and you can throw the crackpots out. You know, the ones that we should do blah blah, and it's like, shut up. You know. Madame Lafarge.
Yeah. Extremism on any side is not going to help here. We need calm, rational heads, and we need to just throw the ideas out there on the table and discuss whatever comes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to set up here too. Sorry, I had to run because
That's okay.
I have this alarm clock that only works when it wants to and not when I want it to.
Oh yay!
I'd say that's pretty alarming.
I know, right? I'm trying to use
where's cryptic? That was a perfect cryptic joke.
Like I try to use it to regulate my sleep so I live like somewhat of a normal person while I'm looking for work. But no, this has been boiling for a really long time. And like I've said before, a lot of it is hurt feelings on our end, but also it's a lot of frustration. Because like I said, even when you're a food handler like me, like I've coined sandwich maker because I think it's hilarious.
Sandwich girl.
You know what? It's still a skill, you know,
Yeah.
I can still, you know, I still value it. But you know, for me, getting another job 5 years ago, I could have just handed out a resume and had one already. Right now, I can't get a job. I cannot get a job unless I invest so much money that I don't have to get it. And it's for simple things like I've never driven a car. Didn't have to. lived close enough to everywhere that I would
And we're
carry my
talking
groceries.
about even like the lower or the lowest of rungs here. The
Yeah.
competition is just, it's brutal.
It's brutal, and I'm not being racist when I say this, but it is frustrating to go into a store and see that like 2/3 of the store are people who are migrants, and I don't have a problem with them getting a job. They're hard workers, and I have a lot of friends who are Filipino, and I love them to bits. But I'm like, you guys are taking 3 jobs at a time sometimes. And, you know, I'm looking at this store, and there's probably about 50 employees here. And when I know that at least 35 to 40 of you are Filipino, that's frustrating. You know,
Are they citizens, or are they?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't. And that's
We
a lot
have
of.
this thing called the temporary foreign worker program, and a lot of service jobs, lower rung jobs, are being snapped up by these, and a lot of the middling to higher end jobs, yes, they're immigrants who have taken the time, gone through the process. I welcome them as a Canadian brother or sister, as does Jen. But you know, there's these programs in place that they're snapping up a lot of jobs that we need.
Unfettered migration, immigration.
Yeah. And I mean,
it has caused an enormous amount of trouble in Great Britain. It has caused trouble in Canada, across Canada, like it has across Great Britain. And we have the particular issue with illegal immigration. We need people for certain things. And that's how we managed our immigration system. We weren't just taking in hordes of unskilled laborers who can snatch up those low-end jobs. Some of them with a lot of fake documentation. There's been wage stagnation in the United States for almost 40 years. The middle class has stagnated. And if you want to draw a direct line to something, and I'm touching a third rail that's going to make somebody somewhere call me a racist.
You're a racist.
Thank you.
Yeah, Blind Chris, I want my province to be able to help the rest of Canada. Like, I want us to be self-sufficient. Like, this is what I really want more than separation. Like, when I say separation, it's not that. It's more just having more of a say over what we do in Canada. That's really all it boils down to. If I'm saying stuff like that, it's mostly just hurt, a lot of hurt. But this is also just like, you know, we're burying kids. We're burying college students who've gone out, spent their whole time creating a career that we've had, you know, they've had their whole lives destroyed by this, you know. And I mean, they'll recover. Some of them might find other jobs, but the way it's been handled has been so un-Canadian that a lot of Albertans don't feel like we're in our own country. And that's the thing that I want to address. Like, it's...
I think that a lot of that stems from outside influence from...
Yes. Go ahead.
I mean, I just, you know, I'm just touching on something like that. There's a lot of outside influences affecting that in a malicious way, and it's not helping. And that is the direct result of these more severe undertones of the whole situation. Whereas with the Ontario power thing, it's just bad business, bad governance. It's not outside influence.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense. It sounds like it's a deal for a deal somewhere, but that deal isn't benefiting anybody. The secondary one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, other competing oil is one of the biggest businesses on earth. Like, other oil interests are paying money to put a chokehold on this through various means, and it's not just one. It's and I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy here, but what one is going to do, another will do in a different way. So there's definitely this chokehold around Alberta oil, which is
monopolistic behavior is what it is. But
Yeah,
it's done in,
you know, it'd be a shame if you started selling oil to the United States at a price that we don't think you should, or something bad might happen.
yeah,
Like,
it's a form of corporatism, and we're seeing it in the United States too.
yeah, and then you have on top of that the federal government, who's far too compliant because obviously they're somewhere getting paid for either turning a blind eye or physically writing legislation that allows this to happen.
Yeah. One thing you brought up that I do think could be addressed, especially if there's any hope of putting together some kind of constitutional convention for Canada, is you could address the representation issue vis-a-vis the Senate.
Yeah.
That it's fine if the lower house operates based on population like the way ours does.
Yeah, of course.
But that if the Senate were,
as it should be,
were more balanced, and because they are the higher house, they could serve more in the advised consent role that our Senate does, especially like treaties.
Yeah.
Possibly trade negotiations, barring collusion. You know, so it just all legislation in the United States has to start in the lower house, and then it goes to the Senate for recommendation, and then it comes back to the lower house for ratification. And that is, if both your houses are based on proportionate population, why do you even have two houses? Do you see what I'm saying? Why do you even have two houses? Well, of course, but you know what I'm saying. Why don't you just bump up the number of representatives?
No, I totally
population and have a unicameral.
I totally agree with you, and I think that kind of a update to our Senate would allow the provinces to come together more as a whole and be a more unified Canada, whether or not on individual topics,
it would give them equal footing about certain matters.
Yeah,
which would...
because like I said to Jen in the last stream, you know, I'm as much of a part of Alberta as she is, as she's a part of Ontario. Like, we are a country. Yeah, I'm a bit of a nationalist in that way. I believe, okay, we have this wonderful piece of real estate. Let's stop fighting and start, you know, making it prosper. And having proportionate or equal representation in the Senate through the individual provinces would be the first step to making it a more unified front of Canada, as opposed to these provinces constantly fighting for power and fighting for to have their, like,
Dominion.
outside of Quebec and Ontario having so much as even their voices heard.
Yeah. Sorry, I was making a little Dominion joke.
Well,
yeah, I know.
So one of the things I was going to bring up, it's not just across Canada where we've had issues. And this is where I would say the resentment with the U.S. has cropped up. And this is not against you guys. It's honestly just it's the politicians.
I'm not representing the United States here.
Nope, you're not. It's the politicians there too. A lot of one of the homeworks that I gave functional was this program documentary called Over a Barrel. And it's one of those things where this crops up everywhere you go. Like, this isn't just Canada. This is everywhere. We've found paper trails, right? And so this is not new. Like, this is a 10-year coverage that they did since 2010, where they went from one industry where you could see the interference to another, and it always comes back to us with the oil community, because it's always outsider interference. So some of it was coming from the Rockefellers. A lot of money was coming from the Rockefellers.
What a surprise.
And it's not just them. Like, there's probably companies that I just don't know the names of because I don't follow all of that stuff. It's, you know, I know they're there. I know they fuck with people, but until I see paper trails, I don't know who to look at.
We also found evidence of gay frogs.
Yes. You know, and it's not just you guys. A lot of it's coming from China. But like even the Filipinos. So a lot of them are here because they're trying to understand our industry, because they found oil just off the coast of the Philippines. So they come here because they know that Canada has the cleanest oil. There's a reason for it. Like, we've put a lot of time and money into fixing it so that we don't have as many leaks. There's going to be leaks. That's a hurdle that we have to go through. But at the same time, we're going to have to wean off of oil because, 100 years from now, 150 years from now, 300 years from now, they don't know the estimates. But like, looking based off of what Texas is doing, we could probably run for just as long, if not longer. And that's what we've been trying to set up, is not just across Canada, but across the US too. We want to block off the interference from everywhere, because we know like Saudis fuck with us. We know the Russians fuck with us. We know that China fucks with us, and they do it with our resources in our own political system. You guys aren't all bad. I have
No.
my grandfather is buried in Surrey, Blind Press.
BP, I'm from Toronto. So.
No, I it's not just you guys. I want everyone to be able to have that ability, and
when we say on like Ontario, Alberta, we're not saying Ontarians, Albertans. It's the representation on the government level. So Ontario, their representatives act in a certain way.
So, like, something I mentioned to Prospero and Functional, a lot of the mentality from Alberta and Saskatchewan in how we view how you guys view us. So, not you guys as in like the whole, but in terms of like the government. So when they're viewing us, they're not viewing us as like 4.3 million people. Sorry, they're not seeing us in Saskatchewan as 9 million people. They're seeing Saskatchewan as 14 seats, and they're seeing us as 34. And that's our political system. I'm not saying you guys do. I know you don't. I have family. I've got cousins with little children in Surrey, and my grandmother's in a home right now. She's like, so what I'm talking about, like, I don't want to cut off, like, we might have to cut off the taxes, because unfortunately Ottawa doesn't talk to us. It's not a threat.
They come pick up the check and then they leave.
It's not a threat to you. To be honest, I'm pissed off because I know most of that money doesn't go to you, Blind Press. I know most of the money doesn't go to Functional or Elwyn or people who genuinely need it. I know most of that money is being spent on bullshit, and you guys do too.
No, you're right, BP. That's why I explained it a little bit more. I mean, again, I'm on an Ontarian, Jen obviously Albertan, and we've been talking about this, and sometimes it gets a little heated. And when we say you guys, we preface that by saying, well, it's not like a personal like me versus you, and we understand that it doesn't. Yeah, Ottawa doesn't talk to anyone, but they really like Toronto. They really like Quebec, Southern Quebec, because I mean, like, this is where all the population is. This is where the political power is. But that's why, like, Deck, dealing with an electoral college maybe eventually. But again, if we can take that first step and just saying the Senate is now an equal representation across all of the provinces, might be the first step in helping to develop a system similar to that, so that it is a more equal system. So each province has an equal seat at the table, but in the House, it's based on population, so that Ontario will have its number of seats based on its population. Quebec will, the Maritimes will. They'll all be. You'll still have your representative in government.
Yeah, by all means, poke me if I do that, because, like I said, this is like, I'm not even projecting my own thoughts here. I'm literally just regurgitating what I hear.
yeah, but again, she is right in some like this live stream that you sent me. Like, that is more of the tone that they're coming from, is that they are saying, oh, it's Ontario bad kind of thing, and that's why we kind of just brush that aside and try to get to see if there are actually any sort of salient points in there and try to dissect them.
Yeah, but honestly, if we could, the real wording here is more like, if we could wall off Ottawa and Quebec, minus like my friend Caligula. That's more what we're talking about. It's a really bad thing that they've done, because it's actually created fights within that community itself. Because like Saskatchewan's like, you guys are throwing us under a bus, and we're like, no, we're preparing for more heat than you. Because we are the target. Saskatchewan isn't even in there. Like, I mean, they're arguing like they are, and we're just like, listen, we're the guys with the 50 years of like clear stress here. We're the guys who like all the other little provinces go to, and they're like, can you try to vote this in because you have more say than we do, and we have no say. So it's not a good position to be in, and I'm not even like that. I'm like, gosh, I have family in BC, I've got family in Ontario, I've got family in the US, I've got family in Australia because they might have miscounted some sheep, you know. So if I do it, just poke me, okay?
Same can go for me too.
God, yeah, no, it's very frustrating. Like my brother's gotten mad at me a couple times. He's like, you got to remember that grandmother is like in a hospital. Like, what do you think she's running off of right now? I'm like, I know she's running off her tax dollars because my mom helps her rent. My aunt tries to help her rent, but my aunt was a teacher in Ontario, so you can imagine how screwed she was.
So I think BP, like a lot of the what I would like to see is just a little bit more dialogue in the public space, in news media, about what's going on, and more honesty. Obviously, these are semi pipe dreams in like Ontario and Quebec electricity, Alberta's oil, the fisheries on the east and west coasts. Like each industry is being singled out, attacked, strangulated by activists and red tape and bureaucracy, to the point where it's destroying entire communities. We've seen it on the East Coast. We're seeing it in the prairies.
It's really bad.
And it happens because people don't see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it's intentional. Like, I hate to throw the tinfoil hat on so early, but do you really think it's any coincidence that, they paid off the major media moguls and outlets, not moguls directly, maybe, who knows, right before the election, right as this is happening now, like, yeah, and oh God, as much as I sometimes appreciate our social safety nets up here in Canada, they can be total fucking dickwads.
They are. They really are. Like, I mean, even for me, I don't have any physical disabilities. I went for almost 4 years without this job, and I finally applied for help because it's just to help my immediate bills. Like there's been times where I joke that I'm on a diet, and I am, but like when you realize that half of that is forced. And I mean, and this is regular food. I'm not buying a lot of junk food. My brother insists that we do something at least once a week, but not once a week, once a month. But even for that kind of stuff, like I don't do any of it. I cook everything from scratch. At the most, I just stay away from baking because, like I said, I'm on a diet. Sad face. The amount of cheap foods you can make baking, man, it's just like, but I live in a capital city in Canada, and we are talking about things like rabbit huts. That should not happen in a Western nation ever. Even our migrants are struggling a lot. They're struggling a lot harder over here. That's why even when you say conservatives over here, our foreigners voted conservative. They all did. Like, they know they're being screwed over here. It's the guys, it's you guys, what you guys have over here on your side. I'm really worried about them because, like, a lot of the votes came for the Liberals through the migrants, and I don't think I know they don't know what they've signed up for because they're too dumb.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Ignorant of what they've
signed up for.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of been that's a leftist tactic, right? Shipping in votes.
It's like even going back to to what Prospero was saying about riots, I'm like, that's where I'm actually scared for you guys more than anything else. Because, like, even if the numbers aren't that high, it takes one guy to get to lose his mind, to harm a bunch of people who had nothing to do with it. And that's where my mentality is. It's not that I don't want people in here, because we've had lots of great Muslims. We've had a lot of Sikhs start up, different businesses, and they're great people. But if you're coming in thinking you're going to get free stuff, even if we didn't have the threat of cutting off the pipelines, that threat is actually still there, not because of us, but because of what we voted in. But yeah.
Free Gibbs. Gib. I want my Gibbs.
One of these days, Black Press, I'm going to bring you in on a stream with Functional, and I'll bring Caligula in, because he's our unicorn from Quebec.
Oh, God. I'm surrounded by Frenchmen.
He calls them moochers, and yes, he does call Jagmeet Singh Towelhead.
Towelhead, yeah.
He just does it like I
That's
can't even stop.
outright.
I can't even stop him from it. I'm like, I would never do that. I just did, but I would never do that outside of the context.
See, I mean, even somewhat in Toronto, but outside of Toronto, like, this PC thing really isn't like, You're just shooting the shit with your friends. Obviously, you're not going to be calling people at work towel heads, but it's less of a social stigma.
No, I wanted to bring you guys all in to do like an old school chicken cannon. We'll just pick the dude of the week or the dude of the month, and we'll just go through all the things that they did that makes them a terrible person.
Nice. I'm so in for that. Yeah.
And we'll let whoever's watching the stream decide what it is that we're going to stuff the cannon with, like they did back in the day. So it could be cereal, it could be crap. We could just shove a bunch of fake pot in it and just fling it at Trudeau, because like the only thing he brought to the table was pot, and he couldn't even handle that.
Oh, it's failing miserable. It really bugs me. It really does. I have such a connection to the industry. I just, how do you fuck up something so easily self-regulating and so easily produced?
And there's something else to that community that they've completely forgotten. Like while we talk about transitioning off of oil, which is still going to take years, it's still going to take a lot longer than they're trying to predict. The oil community had something that was at least something to stabilize it, because they were pitching hemp oil. I mean, it's still oil. You'll still get shit from it, and constructing it across Canada doesn't really work. But if it slows down some of what you're using, there's a reason why some people went to corn. I know it's not necessarily the best solution, but it's something that helps. My brother talked about the electric cars that they're coming out with too. I'm like, unfortunately, they're probably just as dirty to the environment as the oil.
More so.
Lithium is a big problem.
And I'm like, well,
it's a big problem.
I'm like, with the pot and having the industry done right, that extra money, that taxes that they were getting from it could have gone towards better technology. Just saying.
Well, what? I'm just laughing at what Blind Press said about fill it with crappy Southwestern Ontario putain. Oh God, how much natural gas do you guys move in pipelines? Out of curiosity.
Sorry, what was it?
How much natural gas do you move in pipelines? Out of curiosity.
Oh, okay, let me just Google that, because I had that number and I've saved so many articles, but
because you have miles upon miles upon miles of pipelines, but because a lot of them are just running across vast spaces where nothing is. If you know what I'm saying. As opposed to, the United States is as far as crude oil, shorter pipeline system. We move a lot of natural gas through pipelines. People don't have any idea how much pipeline there is.
Okay, so for us, this first article, let me just find it.
Decky was probably... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. As the major gas-producing province, we produce 69% of Canada's natural gas production. And this isn't even at full throttle.
Right.
So yeah, 32% less than the natural average for our natural gas. Like I said, this isn't even at full throttle. This is us being cut off from the sea. And like I said, if you compare us to Texas and how much they run across the U.S., we should.
We still move an inordinate amount of product by rail.
We do too. Yeah. It's one of the things that
pipelines are so much safer than rail. It's unbelievable how much safer they are.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they leak. Yes, occasionally because of maintenance issues, they explode and go boom.
Yeah.
But we had 2 spills into the James River around Lynchburg within a year.
Yeah.
Rail cars just toppled over, slid down a bank, and headed right toward the major tributary through the state. Now, it was quickly contained. But, there is a difference between light crude and heavy crude. And most of the pipelines have containment, catch sinks basically for this stuff. But I'm just curious because it really is comparing apples to asteroids between the miles of pipeline in Canada and in the US. Just it seems like you've got way more than we do.
I don't know. That's out of my purview.
And there are a lot of cross-border ones too, though.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's 3 major ones.
And
Yeah.
Montreal and
well, a lot of the stuff that I was looking at when I came across that video with the paper trails from the U.S. was like the Rockefellers, because I mean, we have our own transit. Our own trains do run most of our oil. A lot of the big issues comes from those accidents. Everything else, you're looking at pipelines that are run through the U.S. that are Canadian pipelines, but it's like, well, yeah, because we don't really do that very often, do we? Like, we're usually using the trains. That's why we want to go to the pipes, because it is more efficient.
oh yeah, Keystone. The whole kickoff about the Keystone pipeline just those arguments got retarded after a while because those people were screaming and yelling as if they didn't know how much pipeline was already laid in the country.
Yeah.
And also that it is far easier to catch what you move compared to what you leak between the oil sands in Houston. That's a number one, that's a very, very long run of pipeline. And granted, yes, there's only one inspector for every 5,000 miles of pipeline, but it was the cost and jobs. These people that want to, no, we can't complete it. You know how many welders and pipe fitters and, oh my God, just the boon to the economy overall. And something else you said. I mean, I was trying to do some research and listen to you at the same time. Electric cars have to be plugged in. Where does the fucking power come from when you plug them in?
Gas
or coal.
That's why we need more nuclear, baby.
Well, but we've had clean coal technology since the 1980s. Just because you look at the shit in China and India.
Cleaner, yeah.
Much cleaner. Much cleaner.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's byproduct from every power production. We don't have the battery capability to store excess power from some of the, in quotes, alternatives. And I hate to tell you this, but wind farms ain't going to cut it. How do you can't store the power? I mean, they just have not developed the technology for
efficient storage. Yeah.
For efficient storage. So you're going to slap up all these wind turbines, which, by the way, use oil products to maintain them. The Irish
maintain, yeah.
Some of the ones in the Irish Sea, their footings are getting loose. Oops, we didn't calculate exactly what the effect of the. I mean, I've seen wind turbines down more than I've seen them running in certain places. And it's like, we'll run on a 0% carbon. No, you won't. I mean, that's an absolute freaking pipe dream.
Yeah, the only solution to that is fucking mass genocide on a global scale.
Yeah, and the other thing about oil, when's it going to run out? All the dinosaurs didn't die on the same day.
No, right?
And not all the plant life, because this isn't dinosaur guts that we're running through our cars, all right? Did not die on the same day. It's like coal is being produced as we speak through geologic pressure. So are diamonds out of coal. So I think there's a limited understanding. I mean, we can't continue to consume purely one product forever.
Sure,
Because
that's why the diversity is a good thing, but
more nuclear.
Like you said, you can't rely on pure solar, pure wind. Sure, you can have it.
They're great supplementals. They're great
supplementals. Yes,
the wind not so much. I don't think wind turbines have worked out very well. They certainly haven't for avian life.
The other one doesn't really work out either. It's the problem is where they're putting it. It's killing off so many of the little birds that are actually really necessary.
They fly over top of those big heat reflectors and squab on the hoof.
It's been a lot.
Good.
More
then you
numbers.
can feed the homeless.
Like they aren't being honest with the numbers of birds. That's actually the thing that's concerning. It's like they're trying to push it like it's the save all, and it works in certain circumstances, but you don't want that out in fields where you want to have the cedars. In a city you can maybe do that in certain areas, but I wouldn't put them near farms or anywhere where you have like national birds. We've actually, it's one of those things. My dad's one of those guys who watches birds. Like it's just one of his hobbies that he doesn't talk to me about as often. But it's a lot of the little birds have gone extinct, and they don't even mention it. And it's actually kind of terrifying because those are the birds that fly across the world. Those are the birds that like literally will take seeds from here and bring them all the way over there because they poop them. And a lot of what we are is that's literally what kind of trees, what kind of bushes, what kind of shrubs we have. They're berry bushes. So a lot of our problems is literally things are dying out and they're not talking about it. You can always even take that all the way up north because like a lot of the wind turbines were put up there, just to see how it would work. And yeah, they're just tearing through our bird population.
Well, there are a fair number of birds like sanderlings that travel their entire lives.
Yeah.
They come all the way up the eastern seaboard and they end up in the tundra. And they nest and then they turn around and they go like all the way back to basically South America and then they repeat the process. I mean, granted, they're shorebirds. So as far as moving, they're not pollinators or anything to the same extent, because I mean, what are they going to do? Poop out a tiny little crab shell?
Yeah.
But we do things many times to save the environment that has the negative impact down the line. It doesn't just have a negative impact on humans. We end up overpopulating the area with the creature we were trying to preserve, and then you end up with stressors there. And we keep playing God.
We're just too stupid to be playing God.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the horrible Yellowstone fire of the 80s kicked off a whole lot of debate about whether you do any clear cutting, whether you clean up forest debris, or whether you just let things take their course. Because we act almost as if the Plains Indians flew giant pissing buffalo over top of forest fires to put them out. They didn't. They moved. Wildlife moves. Some of it will get caught, but you create an enclosed environment that you have very often in national parks where there isn't anywhere for them to move past a certain boundary. And then what do you do with them? They're trapped, or you have elk in the middle of, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which you don't exactly want. It's the more we manage, the more we seem to fuck up because we're trying to micromanage a macro system.
Yeah, we've had. I mean, this is across the world too, but like we've had issues with that up here, where just a simple person brings in a new species and then they release it into the wild. We actually had some up in BC, like some of the lakes up in BC. They were trying to experiment with bottom feeders because they were having issues with pollution on the bottom of the lakes. So they were like, well, if we bring in this shrimp, it'll eat the garbage. Well, the shrimp ate all the bottom feeder food, basically. I mean, they got rid of the garbage, but they also killed off all the bottom feeders. So there are now lakes up here that you will not be fishing from for the next 20 to 30 years because they've killed off every other.
Well, look at the Asian carp.
God, it's so bad.
And what it did in the Great Lakes. I mean, it's like, God, Jesus, what the hell? We've got people releasing goddamn pythons and boa constrictors in the Everglades. You know, I mean, where you've got these freaking gigantic constrictor snakes in a part of the world where they're not from. You know, it's just like...
Yeah, China's definitely not sending their best.
Not with the Asian carp. And up kudzu. I don't know if you know about kudzu to beat erosion. Okay. Yeah, what happened with the kudzu? It took over everything.
Everything.
Oh, but it'll help with erosion. Well, of course, it's the fastest growing thing that helps with erosion, but there are a lot of things that will help with erosion that can be better controlled than kudzu.
So to answer Blind Press,
let's get back to that.
So the thing is it's not that the premier hasn't been arguing about the pipelines. Like we've gone through 3 right now over the last 12 years, and they've been arguing it. Rachel Notley dug us a very big hole, because she was playing both sides. She was trying to point, be like, yeah, we need the oil sands, but half of her employees were activists, well-known activists. So the thing with BC right now is the guy that they have as a premier he wants nothing to do with the oil just as bad as the Quebecois bloc leader wants nothing to do with the oil. So that's a lot of the issue right now is between the Bloc Quebec and I believe it's NDP for BC. They're both acting as a coalition with Trudeau's government. That's why we're so mad. That's why we were so betrayed.
Because they're literally being bullied in Parliament.
It's we have people in BC who would love to have us get those pipelines done. There are employees waiting, who are probably not employed anymore because it's taken so long, who have been waiting to put it in. And like I said, they've brought in a lot of eco guys who go into the native communities. They stir them up. They start telling them, oh, the evil white man is just here to destroy your property. And we're here saying, no, actually, we want to give you the rights to working your end of the property. We want to give you the rights to that part of the business so that you can run it. You guys can have your own infrastructure. You can have your own employment center there. It would trickle down a lot of money to the community. And it has nothing to do with their chiefs, who are really honestly the only ones going and getting any money from it.
Mm-hmm.
But because they've created this coalition, our premier is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The only thing he can do is make threats. And it's frustrating because we don't necessarily want to do threats, but we're working with a government.
You got to rattle the sabers so the rest of the fucking country says, okay, talk to us. But it's not happening.
Yeah, like a lot of the talks between BC and us, and we're trying to be really good with the mainlanders because they're the ones who are like, yeah, we want the business, we need the business.
Let's form a symbiotic relationship here.
But a lot of it, they're in the same boat as you guys with Ottawa. They are in the same boat with Toronto, because between Vancouver and Victoria, they've let in so many foreign interests. They've got so many migrants who aren't understanding of what's going on. And like I said, this whole pushing the racist thing, it's really messing up their communities more than it's messing up ours. Because a lot of the anger is because we were promised things, not just through our premiers, but also through prime ministers. So like, here's the thing. Stephen Harper did good for the first 2 terms. His last one was a doozy. So I am holding him against that. Because we could have at least done more business with the U.S., Barack was fighting with us on a lot of it, but we could have done more business with the U.S. and our money problems wouldn't have been solved, but they would have been a lot less painful because we made investments that are gone now. So, you get the odd asshole from Toronto who's like, well, well, Justin Trudeau spent $4.8 billion or $4.9 billion on this pipeline. I'm like, did he mention that we've probably lost like several billion dollars over that? Well over that. Like you're talking more like $200 billion worth of money that we've lost in investments because we've lost our investors too, for the record. Because we keep having to turn people away because the politics are interfering with it so much. So it's one of those things, like I said, we could have done business with the U.S. to get that water line. I mean, we might have had to make purchases and had to work with Democrats who are just as equally insane, but we would have focused on that instead of Toronto, or not Toronto, on Quebec or BC. Yeah.
Huh. I was just looking at the Keystone XL
No.
product, and it was like one state in the United States messing it up. Nebraska wanted to reroute. Trump basically Bigfooted it and permitted it this year.
Yeah, I remember seeing that story.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not like it's going to benefit the U.S. It's all for export, limited pipeline. So what?
Yeah, like I said, I think most of the frustration is it's not just that we can't get our business out. It's just every time, and it's not just Ottawa, it is our Conservatives too. Like I said, a lot of us are really looking into them because we know that it's career politicians on both sides. And it's false investments. It's false investments. When you're talking about billions of dollars and how much that affects not just a small group of people, but a large group of people.
I think Blind Press is possibly making a good point because Alberta feels like it's been kicked in the ass for so long. They may see that they may have, blinders on as to the fact that they're no longer alone in getting kicked in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That all the other provinces are getting kicked in the ass too because of this incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been so angry and so focused for so long on Alberta that they're still raising hell as if it's only happening in Alberta, which isn't the best political approach to getting the ear of the people in charge. Because if they stage it more as the entire Dominion is up shit creek because of this, we have prior experience with this, and all it's going to do is make things worse for us. I mean, to speak personally, but it's now going to try to drag down the rest of the country the way we've been kicked in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's going to benefit unless something's done to address this. Because if it's, if the only state in the union, if just like Nebraska made it all about themselves, things aren't going well for us. Eventually Iowa's going to go, you think things are peachy over here?
Yeah.
And Kansas will raise its hand and go, you want to shut the fuck up? Bad shit's happening here too. It will sound like the kid throwing the toys out of the pram instead of like looking a little bit outward and seeing that bad policy that has adversely impacted Alberta for a long time now is now being applied to the macro.
I think the separation movement, Blind Press, in all honesty, it's just, this is 50 years of frustration. This is 50 years of like everything else we've tried hasn't worked. I don't think it's a solution either. Like over the last week, I'm like, the anger and the defensive wall is natural. Like it's natural for us to put it up, but like you keep poking at me because I do want to train myself out of that mentality. Because I do 100% believe that it's all of Canada that's being screwed over. Like, it's just, it's like I said earlier, Alberta has had this mentality of like all the little guys go to us, and then we end up taking a lot of the brunt of it. And that's not a good mentality either. You're not wrong. You are absolutely not wrong. But like I said, it's like calling irate bear, irate Alex. It's just gonna take me some time to get used to. So poke me in the butt if I'm doing it, because I'm a little bit. I'm like my mom. I call everybody by every other name other than their name until I get to their name.
Yeah,
So,
the only thing that Alberta might have some right to do is say, "We
Mhm.
told you so. We told you this was going to eventually fuck everybody."
Mhm. Yeah.
But that still is bratty, and it's. I love what Blind Press said that Newfoundland got hosed over too. Here's the thing, though: they're probably spitting in the fish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They really did. Like I told Functional, and this is no sling to them, because they're definitely. I know people from there who didn't vote for Trudeau. But the hurt feelings are going to affect them, because right now, if we have to choose between our own to get the jobs and bringing in people from Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or PEI or Newfoundland, like they're not going to have a good time getting a job out here. And that was one of the things that we were trying to do, was to share what we have with the rest of you guys. That's been the real goal. And I think a lot of guys have gotten short-sighted. Like, it's like, yes, we're our goal is to try to help everybody else out, but you have to remember that, are we really doing that? You know, oh God, my brain's been to so many places the last week. I'm going to play like nothing but stupid games after this, just so I can like have something fun. But no, I do want to reach out to you guys more, and start these talks, because I think a lot of the kids in this Wexit movement are just, they've been screwed over so bad, and I want them to get some help too, because like I said, there's some ringleaders in there that are scary people. Functional probably can tell you, like Pat is maybe the leader. I think that's his name now. I don't know.
I don't remember the names. No, sorry.
But in that group, like he's definitely a
prominent member. Yeah.
I would call him a snake oil seller, and I feel really frustrated, because these kids are smart. Like these are kids who are used to taking apart projects and rebuilding them so they work better. And I want them to have a better chance at fixing our problems than what they've been given. And I think talks with other provinces. And I've told them I'm going to bring in Magic one of these days, or Caligula. Sorry, I'm used to calling him Magic. Because I think they need to hear someone from Quebec really tell them what it's like there. And get that communication going. Because a lot of the problems is the communications.
Yep. You allow wounds to fester for too long, then people can't see past the ends of their noses, and especially if they're being manipulated by older people who speak with authority.
Yes.
If somebody wants to start an, in quote, separatist fight, they're going to send out their foot soldiers. They're not going to do it themselves, and they're going to manipulate these kids into being the foot soldiers. And they're going to rile them up, and then they're going to say, when one of them does something stupid, well, that's on him. He should have known. She should have known it was all metaphorical. Well, you can take saber rattling up to a point, and then it becomes just overt hostility, and the ears of the other provinces will close.
Yeah. The one good thing about this group, though, is I've discovered that a few of them are, and I hate to pin it on that group, but they're kind of like 4chan level autists. So I'm like, at least you guys are fact checking. And I keep telling them, like, I know it's a pain. If you guys want me to do the odd one, I will do it too, just to help out. I hate going through our government web pages. I don't know how you do it, Blind Press. That I would be tearing my hair out. But they're going through and they're fact checking. So one of the things that pissed me off the most in that movement was they were pushing this 20%, 30% suicide rate going up. And that just pissed me off. So it is up. It has gone up, which is natural, because like they're like forcing people into a fight or flight or die situation. So a lot of young kids have made really poor decisions, you know. So I'm like, this is a different topic that you were talking about. You're pushing numbers that don't exist, and you're using a community that's already suffering to do it. And a lot of their kids looked it up, and I think they saw those numbers, and they were like, okay, so that's immoral. I'm like, if you want to do that, focus on the families that it's affected and let people in Toronto hear their stories. That's actually more productive. That actually puts them on a human level, and it's not manipulative, and it's not a lie, and it's not using that community.
And then we can take down the bourgeoisie. I mean, what?
Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's there. You go. You end up. The French killed all the people who knew how to steward the land because they didn't like them because they were aristocratic. And they didn't just kill them; they killed their households. And I mean, so you're looking at kind of burn the damn barn down with the horses in it.
Yeah.
I can empathize with the hurt, especially with the economic displacement, because that's poor immigration policy.
Mm-hmm.
That's shit policy right there. But we all know diversity is our strength. La 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 la. Because it looks good on paper, but nobody goes out into the communities and sees who's been unemployed by all this replacement labor, and they don't care because it's virtuous. Look at all the Filipinos we have in work. Look at all the Syrians we have in work, is how they'll phrase it. Isn't this marvelous? We found housing and jobs for all these people. Okay, then you go to the, in quote, native Canadians. How many of them are out of work and how many of them are out of their homes? Yep. Well, no, don't look at that. Please don't look at that. Look at all.
That was under a tarp. You can't see that. Go away.
That's right. This is all the lovely rainbow. And after all, most of them were white, and fuck them.
Well, that's why
I totally agree with you, Blind Press. I mean, like, I equate it to, a kid at playing a board game, and they're sort of winning, but the other players are changing the rules in some sort of undemocratic way, and the kid just sort of gets fed up and throws the table over. Like it is kind of a tantrum from some sources. It's not all, but from some sources. And I don't think that that's going to help the situation in any way. I want to breed more discussion about this because that'll probably be the best way to.
I have to disagree with you on one point there, though, Blind Press. It's this idea that it's just a giant tantrum. The problem is that the group itself might be a giant tantrum, but the general sentiment of what they're saying is what a lot of regular average people are saying. Like, I hate using them as an example because it's still who they are, but the Rebel did this little interview in downtown Calgary where they walked around, and you're not going to walk everywhere because Toronto is going to tell you, or at least the media in Ontario is going to tell you that we're like a third empty. It's probably over half of our office buildings are now empty. So it's the thing is the extremity of it is not being discussed. And now we have a group that's manipulative and they're motivating people who would probably have a better time focusing on just a better political party, doing the things that like what Prospero and Functional are saying here. The general sentiment is real. I wouldn't be surprised if they were to do a real vote, like a real vote with that sentiment, you would see scary numbers. That's why I want to do these talks, because if I want to counter these crazy people who are manipulating, like I said, a large group of unemployed college students who should be working in an office building or putting up rigs, that's the thing that's scary. Some of it is, yeah. Actually, some of it is. I've actually read some articles, but the problem is you're look. I don't look at CBC because I won't spend a dime on them. I'll watch videos where someone might cover a video from them, but you'll see it in like the National Post. You'll see it in the Calgary Herald. You'll see it in the CTV. I hate CTV too, for the record. They're not doing the right interviews. They're not talking with the real people. And now we've got a movement that's being under the radar. And that's why I'm willing to post their stuff. And like, I'm putting my neck on the line doing this a little. But like, thank God I'm like a nothing burger on the internet. So.
Well, the only way to defeat a bad idea.
Yeah.
Is to find a better idea with which to defeat it and to give it the sunlight it needs. Because if if people are like, well, you just shouldn't think like that, people will continue to think that way, but they just won't talk about it anymore unless they're talking to people who agree with them. And it causes an even greater sense of paranoia.
But Blind Press, do you get the Financial Post? Do you get the National Post? Because that's what the businessmen are reading. And that's where you're seeing a lot of it. I'm glad they've had some big CEOs do some conversations. Like they did one with my mom's old boss, actually, for Encana. He was the previous CEO. I'd like them to do more interviews with those guys to get their sentiment, because they're a lot more rational and they're less likely to talk about splitting up, because as businessmen, that's like a really poor decision. And I'd like to see them do more interviews with like regular Calgarians and like just Albertans in general, like even the small towns, because it's not just the oil rigs. Like NDP kind of screwed over our farmers too, just like you guys have probably had in Ontario from your Liberals.
There's always time for satire. Huh. I'm confused.
What?
What blind press? The media is saying there's no anti-Alberta movement here in the Ontario. There is and there isn't. There really isn't much of any coverage outside of when there's big protests. And there is, in that a lot of the people who were the non-native side of people protesting things like pipelines, and some of the who perpetuate this thing that, you know, the dirty tar sands oil comes from Southern Ontario. I know a lot of people here who protest, organize and whatever, and you know what, such as their right. Like, I have nothing against, you know, legal assembly, but they're spreading there is a misinformation campaign that it's dirty, that it's, you know, environmentally dangerous and blah 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 blah, and they're using that route to sort of hamper things, which gains public eyeballs, and people in on the federal level in Ottawa, they act on it. So, you know, it is hurting their industry. It makes no sense to me that when you have a product that is in need, and your own financial interests in the government you operate under is hampering you to the point where you're not losing money, but it's affecting and displacing so many people from the industry. I don't understand why something like that would happen. It's the same thing here in Ontario in our fucking power generation. You know, we literally pay the United States to take our power, and it's like, what the fuck? Why is this a thing? Like, I know how it came to be and who did it, but like, why is this a thing? Like, why can government get away with something like that? And I see it happening to what's going on with tar sands oil. Yeah, no, there's always going to be someone who's down. I mean, I don't agree. It's a comedy program. You let it do its thing. There is taking it too far and being hyper political, in that you're preaching as opposed to satiring, or creating propaganda as opposed to satire. But with the Ed the Sock thing, like, he is becoming sort of a how can I put it, a you know, Vox Media type personality. And it's like, oh God, just, dude, you're not funny, you're not relevant anymore. Go away, get a real job, go work at fucking Tim Hortons, dude. Like, you are.
Well, like an example is like me just using Mike from Canmore. Like the Canadian Royal Air Force was our political joking point, where you could joke about any of the parties, and it was you were comfortable with it.
Air Force was just so great back in the day.
And we aren't really at this point anymore, because the talks have broken down so much that it's ridiculous, and it's to the point where like I can even use like Scheer or Bernier as an example. Okay, so Scheer, I'm iffy on him. Like, I think he did underhanded stuff, and I know he did it to Bernier, because everyone did it to Bernier. But like, all it takes is one news article to label a guy as this massive racist when we already know that he wasn't. And it's just there's sides that are just so much more outspoken. I think for us, a lot of it is coming from our National Post and Financial Post. Like, they're still respectful because it's a business thing. But when you see stuff under the radar, like this is, I'm not a business person, Blind Press. Like, I don't know what they look for. This is because this is me getting information from like people who do. But like you can see when they're saying stuff, and it sounds like tinfoil hat talk when I say it. But they look for cues. Absolutely, they look for cues. And it's us little guys not knowing what's actually going to happen that are floundering because they're not talking. Like I said, with like in Canada as an example again. So like they've shipped everybody to, well, they don't have the label of headquarters anymore, and they've moved it to the US, and they're like, well, none of the jobs are going to go, and they've reassured everyone up here that none of the jobs are going to go. What they're really telling you is they're going to go over time. So now you've got people who are like, okay, so we're going to be saving every penny that we have to see how long we last. Because if we get, booted from this company, it could be another 2 years before we get another job. And that doesn't, they could be applying at Tim Hortons. That law doesn't change. So yeah, it's, I'm not looking at the troll sites. I'm not looking at the TYT sites. I know those guys are there. We have our own. Well, the Rebel is our only one.
Maybe. CTV is pretty scummy.
Oh, they did some shit, man. They are on our shit list. God. Well, the Hutterite attack thing might actually nail them in the coffin for a lot of us, because that whole undercover reporter letting in CTV while they convinced the RCMP to allow people to steal turkeys from a farm where they were probably happier.
Well, it definitely is a thing across all Canada, Blind Press. On the last stream Jen and I did with Caligula, we brought up a lot of topics about right before the election that, and just shot some ideas across the bow that were, both causes to these problems nationwide and what, kinds of possible solutions are. And we all sort of agree that there are things like over immigration and bad governing practices and stuff like this that, we'd like to see some form of change or a change in the regulations to allow things to be more efficient and smooth. And I mean, I hate it as much as the next person to walk down the street and see, a homeless person, or know that, an entire industry is laid off, like the Ontario auto industry, Maritime's fisheries and all these things. So, like, for example, with the fishing thing, it's because there was over environmentalism. Oh my God, I can't even speak. Over environmentalism, thanks David Suzuki, to put a lot of red tape, and like they had to cut the fish intake drastically, and it really killed off Eastern Canada. Like it's destitute. And, you know, just as an example, like I thought, well, like, I mean, we can build fish farms. Let's start building fish farms and supplement it that way. Yeah, no, it's not going to replace the fishing industry that still exists, but, you know, a good way to supplement, create some jobs. Let's get maybe some governmental backing on incentives to start these businesses.
So I
Start these industries.
have to point something out, that it's not just like a year and a half between jobs issue. You're looking at more like anywhere between 2 to 4 years. I've been out of work as a sandwich maker. I could get a job anywhere in convenience. And I've been out of work for 4 years, and that's not due to lack of resumes. I hand out resumes to the same places and to different places every day, every week. I go into every site that I can find that has job postings, and the job postings don't change. And everywhere that I've actually had a call, I'm in a room where there's like 30, 40, 50, 100 other people waiting for a job. So it's I know it's like that everywhere. Like, believe me, a lot of people left Alberta to go back to Ontario. So I imagine you guys are feeling a little bit of a strain too. 8% of our population.
Yeah, I mean, we lost what, half of our auto industry in the last 2 decades?
Like 8%.
No, it's 80% now. 80% of our auto industry just up and fucking left in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, it's
Now being fucking made in Mexico. Thanks, fucking NAFTA.
like, it's just, I like I said, I know it's across Canada. I don't doubt that you guys are struggling too, because like I said, 8% of our population went back to either Eastern Canada. No,
it directly affects you, so it's something you want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, they you know, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys are like, where the fuck did all these people come back from? Because 8%.
BP, that's why I'm here. I'm the resident Ontarian. We're just talking about Alberta now because that's kind of what we're talking about. And Jen's very passionate about it, you know, like just like I was back in 2004 or something, when the auto industry was at about half of what it was, and shit was just going down the tube for what was one of the big economic powerhouses of all of Canada.
Yeah, one of the reasons I broke off from talking to Blind Press last week, and this was not you, for the record. This was not you. I stayed away from
Deck, I already said we use the guillotine. We use what works.
It wasn't even from her. It was just like I said, like, there was hurt feelings, and I stayed away from people because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be the person instigating stuff based off of like stupid emotions. Yeah. But this kid told a 40-year-old oil rig person to go make him a double-double. And I know that's just a dumb kid on the internet. So I'm not, I got over it. Like, like I'm reaching out to you too, right? But like, when you see stuff like that, you're just like, you want me to go get a temp job? Really? Really? Those guys invented programs for temp jobs. Okay.
Where do you think Learn to Code landed?
Like,
yeah.
That's what was, it's been debunked, of course, by Snopes, or so they claim, but it was never said to the coal miners. So I don't know. Did they tell the coal miners when they said we're going to just eliminate coal?
Wait. Snopes says they didn't?
Yeah, they're basically saying that's been debunked.
We've seen the tweets. We've seen the the New York Post article.
You mean from the journos telling these people that they should shut up and learn to code? Yeah, no, it didn't happen. But then the journos got pissed off when they got told to learn to code when they were getting frog marched out of shit sites like Fox and etc. There's a fair number one shitheads on the internet need to be ignored. Blue check marks telling you to learn to code when you're a fucking coal miner is, this kind of economic displacement is going on all over.
Yeah.
Well, they have the safety. They have the safety of
our auto industry is pretty
Prospero.
much.
I truly believe that it's because of the anonymity of the internet. Do you think that fucking New York Post writer would have dared to have said that to an actual coal miner face to face? He would have got knocked the fuck out and lost half his fucking teeth.
Well, I would have enjoyed airlifting some of these check marks directly into a room full of coal miners.
Here's your town hall.
I don't know if you've ever seen how wildernessy a lot of Southwest Virginia and
Oh yeah.
Eastern Tennessee and Kentucky and West Virginia are, but there could be a lot of disappeared journos. I mean, because it'd be like, motherfucker, I'll kill you and eat you. You know, it's just that elitist attitude, and it happens. We were talking about big cities versus smaller towns. College towns it depends, you know. Like the University of Virginia is in a little blueberry of regressive Democrat leftism. I live in a city that's Democrat and progressive, but I can go 30 miles west of here and find people who are like, somebody ought to kick these motherfuckers' asses, you know. There's a lot of that sentiment all over because there's been an enormous amount of economic displacement.
Yeah, that's why I took that break. I was just like I said, I'm not holding it against like normal people. Like
it ain't just you. It ain't just you. You know, and
it's like I go in long enough to try to find articles and then leave. I'm like, oh, I don't need to read this. I don't need to read this. But like sometimes you have to go through the comment sections to get information too.
Yeah.
So it's like try to repress this stuff. This is shit. Okay, this guy has something that's interesting. Okay, I'll try and do a little path there. But yeah, that's why I was avoiding people because I was like, don't take it personally. It's not these people talking to you. It's just crazy, mean people on the internet.
Well, I think if you come off sounding like it's only Alberta, it's because it's extremely difficult to not speak of oneself and one's own situation.
That's also a me thing too. Like I said, like going through different names, it's also a me thing too. Like I probably have to train myself out of it.
Well, it's difficult when you've been unemployed for as long as you have and been looking not to take things personally. And the worst thing you can do when you get up a tree is to keep reading on the subject matter that ran you up the tree in the first place. It's like, take a little break, go kill some zombies. At least I have internet, kind of, you know, and that kind of thing, because this isn't going to get fixed overnight. There is a commitment among, and I'm going to make it about globalists and nationalists. All right. Nationalism is a bad word because everybody has to go National Socialist, Nazi, which is horseshit because all Canadians should care about Canada, should want to put Canadians first, not people visiting on work visas from other countries. Not to be rude. You don't have to be rude to people.
No.
But Canada should put Canadians first.
Yeah.
Just like the U.S. should put U.S. citizens first.
Of course.
I would hope the French would put the French people first. There's nothing. We are not the world. We are not all the children. All right. That's bullshit.
No, everybody's a self-serving asshole.
With sparkly, happy fantasy land. It would be lovely if we could create a utopia like that. But you know what utopias are?
Boring.
They're like unicorns. They don't exist.
You know, a lot of that condensed mentality really has been, it's not just economics. It's actually just been our environment too. Like a lot of this Alberta, helping out Albertans kind of mentality really has to do with the last couple of floods and then the fires. I'm not saying it's the only reason. Like I've gone over this for like the last 3 hours, but the last 3 disasters was really about our communities helping our own communities. And so, yeah, I'd say a lot of that is a lot of the positives that I've seen from the wexit. I'd say it's the only positive is because I've been talking to a lot of people in my province who are like, if you need a job, we'll keep an eye out for you, you know, which is not bad. That's not a bad mentality, you know.
No, that's being neighborly.
Yes.
People people, communities can exist within a larger whole.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's not wrong. It's if a community suddenly feels that all the other communities have ganged up against it, that things can get hinky, or you're just not listening to me. Well, don't scream at me and I might be able to listen to you. And some structural representative issues that I think Canada has.
Yeah.
Because I do think that Senate thing is a little off-putting. It would be off-putting to me. If I were looking to emigrate to a country. I would not, like Canada. I'm not going to want to live in Toronto. I don't want to live in a big city. Big cities fucking suck.
Which is weird because that's where all the fucking immigrants go. Everybody comes to fucking Toronto. Like,
well, of course
why?
they do. Well, because, honey, it's the handout train runs straight out of the center of big cities. So the closer you are to the source of the goodies, the happier you are. Also, that's where the virtue signalers like to say, see the people we're helping.
This is true.
And I am not knocking refugees by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a large number of these refugees who are economic migrants. They are not refugees. And by tugging on the heartstrings in the West, they have gotten entree. If they choose to go into work, they're displacing the citizens. And if they do not, they're sucking off the teat of the citizens' labor, making it even more difficult for more economic development and growth to employ those people who are out of work. I mean, it's one impediment after another impediment after another impediment to entrepreneurship, to all kinds of things, because the wrong kind of people have been setting the rules. And their palms are getting greased for this, because the happy little globalists they don't look at us as people. They look at us as tools and a means to an end. We're nothing but pawns to them. And so who cares if the auto industry in Canada is destroyed? If I invest in automobile shares, I'm not blaming all investors, please. But for the big investors, their return on their money invested is going to be treble if it's in Mexico, because the wage in Mexico is far lower than it is in Canada or the United States. It's a straight up business decision. If the world were an even playing field in that happy little utopia, none of us would look at it as peculiar. That a business is going to look after its own interests, just like we all look after our own interests. You don't feed another person's children before you feed your own child.
Exactly.
But politicians have started telling people that in order to be a good person, you better go feed that child and let yours go hungry. They're not looking after their citizens. They're looking after dispossessed people elsewhere in the world because it makes them feel good about themselves.
And that's one of the things I just don't, and I don't understand is why are people buying that sort of mentality, hook, line, and sinker? It boggles my mind.
I think it's because
obviously, oh shit! Sorry, I hit my mic. Obviously, I know that there's going to be some sort of money behind some, but I'm just talking, the masses who aren't getting any sort of financial reward for this, or any sort of reward other than virtue signal points. Like, why in practice are you actually doing this hook, line, and sinker, and letting other people do it? Like,
follow the money.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it too is like, in the past when we were trying to help other people's problems, we would just throw money at their governments, and obviously it didn't go to the people that needed it, so people were frustrated about it. I think the problem is like, we can't really do that. We can't really go into governments and be like, okay, so you guys are fucked up. We want to change you to a proper government so that you stop screwing over your people. But we do that and they end up being worse, right? So they, you got these globalists who are like, well, you know what? Let's manipulate the system. If we bring these people over here, well, they're still going to do better over here than over where they were, even if they're at the poorest level. So it makes us look like we're doing a good thing, but what we're really doing is we're just manipulating systems. So
they're trying to level the world.
Yeah.
They're literally trying to level the world. And I'll tell you something. I'm particularly fond of the first world in which we all live. I'm particularly fond of our conveniences, and I don't want to be leveled down to what would be the level if you took the entire population of the world and created a mean. And the funny thing about that is none of these elitists who are engaged in this, not the Rockefellers or anything, they're not going to level themselves. It's the rest of us. The rest of us can go back to living as if we were tenant farmers in the 1830s, and they'd be perfectly content because they'd control all the wealth. They don't let the wealth get in the hands of too many people. That's a terrible idea. Good Lord, no.
Yeah.
How will we maintain our elitist status? That if I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat and look at these globalists, it's a lot easier to control large numbers of people when they're fucking cowed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're doing. They're trying to cow the populations into just NPCing their way through life. They're just little gray blobs moving around on a board.
Yeah, on so many levels too. Like it's so pervasive into culture and government and business. Like
I'm supposed to tolerate honor killings because the whole world just isn't the same, you know, and different cultures are beautiful. Well, no, they're
all
not.
Cultures are beautiful.
Shitting in the street is not appealing to me because I actually value my
Diversity is
health.
our strength.
I mean, I'm waiting for a cholera outbreak in San Francisco.
It's probably one of my Alberta counters to Canada. I'm just like, listen to the, you guys are going with these. We are going with these eco guys who are telling us, oh well, if we cap our 2% of the global emissions, we'll solve the world's problems. And I'm like, if you let us get our oil to water, we could actually fix China and India's problems a lot.
Well, yeah, but they won't allow that. There'll be an impediment. They've got to impede that.
Right?
They've got to impede it. And I mean, the Chinese right now can go fuck themselves as far as I'm concerned, because they play so dirty in trade.
Oh, they do.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
They are asshole.
Well, they're currency manipulators.
Mm-hmm.
And they're. I mean, part of my tinfoil hat thing is that they're buying up so much property in Vancouver, in BC, Ontario. They're influencing pop culture. They're influencing social media. I mean, they're no longer trying to fight us with guns and bullets. They're trying to fight us with culture and
they're
capitalism.
not going to. They're not going to take us over culturally. They don't give a shit. Chinese they conquer and absorb.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, an easy way to conquer someone is to sow seeds of discontent, and I can see some of that in the way that they're acting, through business and influence again in pop culture.
Don't forget the Chinese have their own version of the elite.
Yep,
very much their own version of the elite. Communist paradise, my ass. It's highly unequal system. It's like filthy kulak starve as long as commissariat get money.
It's one of those interviews that I really would love to see them do, is the one with the CEO for Husky, because he's technically Chinese. My brother used to work under him for security in the Husky Tower. And that's in Calgary. Because he had that 500 people layoff, and the numbers are still, they're like, oh, we don't know what the numbers are, but if you work out the math on what his bonus was, it works out to 500 people. Because they do a lot of business with us, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're being screwed over quite a lot, because they've been trying to bring the oil to China. They have. But they want to set it up in the same manner that we do our farming. So a lot of our farmers will sell our goods to China, and then China sells their crappy goods back to us for cheaper. So you're not going to find Canadian garlic in Canada ever, because they make a hell of a lot more money selling, elephant cloves to China than they do selling it to here. So we get this like cheap knockoff garlic. That, I mean, it's fine. But
you're not getting California garlic. That's a shame.
Sometimes we do, but it's more expensive.
Yeah, because it comes with the export issue. I mean, it's even between our two countries, there have been some seriously retarded applications of tariff on milk products and things like that. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, what I mean?
As a deli clerk, it bothered me, because I was like, you know what? I'm just as capable of selling your cheese as I am the Wisconsin cheese.
Yeah.
I really am. I do very good demos, and I experiment with cooking, and I share people what you can do with it. And, yeah.
Yep. And it's, I mean, it'd be fine if we were selling surplus to China, but we're not. we're selling base product to China and short sheeting our own bed in the process because they just change the value of the yuan, and you get hosed. They'll just change the value of it, and the danger comes in the currency manipulation. That's why everybody's so afraid of them. Because they don't play fair. And they haven't been playing fair in ages. Nobody decided to tell them to sit down, shut up, play fair, and nobody would trade with them. Because we have all this money invested we have all this, look at Apple. They build their shit in China.
Mm-hmm.
In part because U.S. labor priced itself out. And one of the reasons we did it is because we have fucking minimum wage laws. Which minimum wage laws are a huge impediment to a natural market. And we're not going to fix this all tonight. And I am going to have to run.
Yeah. This has been a long stream. Like we're almost getting up to
yeah, I'm getting kind of.
So the only my last parting words for that is as a chef, whenever I knew I was working with equipment that came from the U.S., I was usually much happier because at least I knew where I was coming from.
Yeah,
their stuff lasts for 40 to 50 years. Some of the stuff we get from China lasts for like maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, even though there's planned obsolescence within certain things here too, but manufacturing has been moved basically because of minimum wage laws. If you look at it, it basically has. Hawaii used to be the world's largest producer of pineapple. It isn't anymore. The Philippines got a lot of pineapple production because they introduced the minimum wage law in Hawaii and made them stick to it. And it, oddly enough, people think, well, you have to give these people a decent wage or they'll never, ever survive. Their chance of upward mobility was better when there wasn't a minimum wage.
That's the truth. That's the flat out truth too. Like I keep telling a lot of the kids who are like, $15 an hour. I'm like, do you know why you're paying $1,400 for your rent every month?
Yeah, it's that $15 an hour shit. And you know why there are kiosks at the McDonald's now? That's that $15 an hour shit. How many people work at a McDonald's now compared to 5 years ago?
Well, it's even
4 versus 20.
Yeah.
Even the grocery stores have been preparing for it because every year they went up in their wages. So like now you have maybe 4 to 6 self-checkout counters where one person is doing the work of 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating because most of the people going through there don't know how to use cash anyway. So you're like, why?
Yeah. It's I kind of have a hate boner for the Chinese. They're supremacists and they're not hashtag not all.
No, you know
right?
what? You know what?
As a nation, they're not good people and they're double dealing and they're
they're good ones are the ones that are already American Chinese because they'll sit there and tell you, yeah, they're fucking with you. Say for Canadian Chinese, the Canadian Chinese, they're looking at them and they're just like,
they're fucking with you. That's why I left.
Like they're flagging us all the time and we're like, we're listening to you. It's just like we're run by, we've been run by a lot of really good manipulators. I don't know what these people have been watching, but man, but yeah.
Well, like you've pointed out, when the problem is hitting you in your pocketbook and you're looking for work, we have a rust belt in our country, and full manufacturing has not come back yet, and it's unlikely to. I mean, because it just that much power has shifted east.
Yeah,
China, but there's so many opportunities, but all of them, I know they're going to be blocked. Everybody's complaining about robotics, but here's something to keep in mind. Keep an eye out. See if anybody like Elon Musk says, I know, I'm going to become a widget builder. Because you're going to need the widgets and the fidgets and the flips and the switches to run these robots. And you're going to need the people to program the robots and maintain the programs, that kind of thing. There's no reason, if we lobbied strongly against things like minimum wage, or I hate to say this, against union, that we couldn't be the widget builders of the world. Why couldn't Canada build all the widgets for all the robots? And we could build the fidgets. And England could build the flippies and the switchies. but we've got to actually change the structure of the economy in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Convince people that they have been overtly harmed by artificial wage and price control. I mean, wage control is just stupid, fucking stupid. Sorry.
I
Yeah,
think
but
that
can we really go back on inflation rates? Like,
Well, if we didn't print money hand over fist, we wouldn't have the inflation, and we ought to
sure,
count
we could curb it, but I don't think we could go backwards.
not particularly, and we certainly don't count. I don't know about Canadian statistics, but the U.S. doesn't count the shit that matters. We don't
well,
count.
it's the same.
We don't count
Yeah.
fuel. We don't count food.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I know compared to 2008, what it costs to buy a cut up chicken in the grocery store now is significantly higher.
Oh yeah.
We don't have some kind of chicken shortage in the world,
And it's become cheaper to produce.
but they printed so much fucking money, the dollar isn't worth what it was.
Yep.
But that's the way to fix it. Throw money at it. God damn it.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago. Our dollar was on, in my at least time on this planet, like our dollar has touched yours a couple of times, and on one occasion surpassed it. So, I mean, the mismanagement is baffling.
Yeah, from all of Canada, yeah, absolutely. It isn't just us. Like I see stuff from you guys all the time. Like I read articles from BC sometimes. It's just getting lost on YouTube a lot. I get kind of caught up with the U.S. politics like everybody else, just because it's just like what?
It's so noisy.
And it's exciting, and sometimes it's funny, and then I look at my own mess, and I'm like, this is my problem: is I'm not looking at my own mess. I'm looking at too many other people's messes.
Yeah.
I pay attention somewhat to your mess, and I pay pretty good attention to Britain's mess, only because all of the Anglosphere is being infected,
Inundated with all this bullshit.
by regressive identity politics and things that are overtly harming their citizens.
Don't matter. They just don't
They
matter.
don't care because, I mean, look at Great Britain. Most of those Ramoners probably all have jobs in Belgium lined up.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give a shit. And I mean, Trudeau, if somebody tries to run him out of a town on the rail, he'll just move to Europe.
He's already got a villa in Paris,
Of course he does.
so like
How could you not?
he's never had to work a real job in his life. Any job that he's ever had is really just to say he's had a job. And this is the guy we elected. And I mean, I say we because I know none of us here elected him.
The royal we, Canada.
But
Well,
Hey,
we elected a cipher, a complete cipher, somebody who was basically a political blank slate. We elected two of them in a row in some ways, except Trump was nowhere near the cipher that Obama was.
And it was the guys behind him that we've been really, trying to rail against. And they're really good at what they're doing. They're horrible people, but they're really good at what they're doing.
The deep state exists, and it's a cross-national deep state. That's the really shitty part of it. The deck is stacked. And the people you go complain to work for the people who stack the deck.
Mm-hmm.
On both sides, yeah.
No, it's a universal problem in the world.
Yeah. No, it totally is.
The Anglosphere,
like watching Bill Maher last night is so infuriating because he's talking about that, and I'm like, just thinking to myself, like beating myself over the head, like, Bill, you're such a fucking moron. It happens on all sides. It's not the scary Republicans. It's the Democrats too. That is the fucking problem. Like, ugh.
Yeah, well,
I used to like him so much.
he's
Been
got
so
a bad case.
infected of Orange Man bad, Trump derangement syndrome that it's just like, I hate watch it now.
Well, the thing about Trump,
He's not funny.
It's kind of interesting. People treat Trump the way they treat that kind of broad thing where they talk about the Jews controlling everything. where
Mhm.
they basically say that 20 million people on planet Earth control
He's
absolutely.
donated more to the Democratic Party than Bill Maher has.
Of course, he has. What he is he's an old school New York Democrat from like
Yeah,
60s, 70s, old school, New
corporate
York
Dem. Yeah, okay.
Well, everybody's bought into corporatism. That's the real problem. Both
Well, you have
parties.
to have the influence, right?
Well, they didn't. used
Money
to.
talks. No, well,
Democratic Party used
in
to
my
be the
lifetime
party.
it has.
Used to be the party of the working man. Just like
Yeah.
Labor in Great Britain used to be the party of the working man.
Yeah.
Now they're the party of the globalists. But oddly enough, so is their opposition.
Is it odd though?
Not really.
We're talking globalism here. They need to get their grubby little fingers in every little pie so that they can control which way the pieces can move.
And they're also convinced they can control certain cultures that they're moving into the West. And boy, do they have another thing coming on that one.
They really do.
They can outgun them, but it will tear apart their kingdoms. It will utterly tear apart their kingdoms.
You're not wrong, Elwin. It is the idiots at the extremes who are screaming loud, and they're getting all the attention because look at how we're connected these days. Instant communication across the planet.
That's why I talk about I like horseshoe theory more. Actually, I think it's a big circle than a linear left-right, because there are authoritarians on both sides of that.
Of course,
left,
yeah.
right. And I don't want any part of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any part of them. I want to be left the fuck alone. I would like to be given the opportunity to prosper with the least amount of interference coming from whatever capital in the globe there is.
Yeah.
For the West, the West is the best. But we had it all. In many ways, after World War II, we had it all. Mm-hmm. Everything was coming up roses, and they couldn't be satisfied with it.
And they couldn't hold on to it.
It wasn't that they couldn't hold on to it. They didn't want to hold on to it. They willingly tossed it away in favor of even more power and this giant... It's one of the reasons I despise the UN. I mean, if we shut the UN down tomorrow, I would rejoice.
I'd dance naked in the street. I fucking hate the UN.
They're horrible. And these countries,
scum and villainy,
go before them and bend the knee as if they were approaching the crown.
I look at them from like as a real life specter from the James Bond novels.
In very many ways, they are. Also, they're absolutely screeching incompetence, and they're hilarious on human rights. Absolutely hilarious on human rights.
Well, look who's been in charge of those for the last...
Well, look who sits on their Human Rights Council. I mean, that'll tell you everything.
From its inception, yes.
Venezuela beat out Costa Rica. I'd move to Costa Rica. I would not move to Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
But Venezuela is going to sit on that Human Rights Commission along with repressive nightmare
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, pretty much anywhere that ascribes to that political faith.
Dogma, yeah.
It's a political faith too. It's a conquest movement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the extremists are just like I said, they're at a level where it's become a religion for some of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's about power and it's about control and it's about a bunch of idiots thinking they can control a bunch of rabid lunatics.
Oh God, Elwin mentioned Star Trek. I'm about to go on a 4-hour diatribe about Star Trek.
It can't happen because I've got a Bloodwing and it's 9:00 and
yeah, me too.
and you did Bloodwing before. Your ears must feel like cauliflower.
I even had more than one Bloodwing because I like I said before, I'm kind of on a half liquid diet right now because of my diet. So
lucky you. You rival me for my chance. I can't believe that I have not gone not once.
Well, luckily I have wireless equipment, so I was still listening in while
Oh, isn't that lucky for you, you smart ass? Well, anyway, my back teeth are floating. Thank you. I enjoyed this, not knowing much about it, and it's a little reassuring that we're all facing the same.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because like the other thing too,
Especially bring in different perspectives. So thank you for that.
well, the reality is like a lot of people don't really know how we run as Canada. Like I mean, people have kind of an idea, but on the world scale,
And their assumptions, yeah.
and their assumptions, yeah, you know, so I kind of want to bring it to light, and part of it is just, you know, for the things that are wrong, letting other people know about it shames them.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to shame us for not, like, I mean, even as a 38-year-old, I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, Jen, I know you were a sandwich maker, but maybe if you're really concerned earlier, you could have like said some stuff. Because even our conservatives, they've never fixed the problem either. Nobody has. Nobody has. It was never. They were never really making that the goal when they were saying they were. And
Nobody's playing for Team Canada.
they are not. And I want us to form a Team Canada. Like I was hoping for Bernier for that, because he, the only guy from Quebec to really approach Alberta.
And to have a more Dominion view of Canada than a
And reject all the hyper leftist identity politics and bullshit. And he was
that made him a Nazi right there.
well, yeah, but I mean, like, it's so disheartening that they couldn't even land, or they landed only one seat, which wasn't even his own riding. So,
yeah. But no, so I hope we can keep doing these. So functional, I will probably have to work out like a time zone. I mean, weekends are a little bit easier because there's more room, but
right.
I want to bring in some other people. Like I've talked to German Badger. We've got our Quebec guy who is funny. He's a bit of a troll, but he's funny. I love him. But yeah, so thank you guys.
I'm watching you, Magic.
We're all watching you,
That was
Magic.
the least bit creepy.
But I will keep everybody informed of what's going on. I'm going to keep watching you guys on the Minions too. Like I realize that I haven't really done that because I'm usually stolen by Monkey and Satsu because they always came when you guys do Minions.
Yeah, we're available on replay. So, you know, it's not like we hide everything after we do it.
It's just really that time zone. It's like everybody is doing a stream at that time. So.
It is, and we're spread across the country, so it was like, okay, everybody just pick a time, and it's hard on those of us in the East Coast if we have to get up early.
Yes.
The next day, because you know, if a stream runs 2 hours, that's 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a while to wind down after being on the stream. You just can't go, okay, I'm going to bed now.
No, it never. Yeah, you're always at least another hour or two before you do that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You just can't that much, but I'll keep an eye out for your stream, because I'm curious more so now. Particularly, I really would like to see a constitutional movement gain ground in Canada. I'm a big believer in constitutions, even though ours has not prevented excesses and retardation. California, I'm looking at you.
Well,
it's a good foundation, though, especially on a grand scale as a federal level.
Well, as a declaration of human rights, it's a pretty fine piece of work too.
Well, for future streams, maybe something to do is to talk about, like, if we were really smart and we're in a minority government, if there was some way we could prop up Bernier this next time, because I don't think Trudeau's going to last. He's not.
We'll also look for other talent. Look for talent that is amenable to the notion of approaching perhaps some of the structural weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Because altering the Canadian Senate, I don't think, would cause some kind of hideous ripple effect through the country, fucking it all in one night.
Yeah.
Like in our particular case, I'd go back to having our state legislatures appoint our senators, because it would force people to think more locally.
Yeah.
We're too wrapped up in federalism. This popular election of our senators has turned into just an increased festering in party politics that I don't like.
Well, it's the latest reality show, right?
It's just happy horseshit. One of our senators worked, was not from Virginia, moved here, but I mean, spent most of his life not in the state. But he can win the popularity contest because he's got big teeth. And I'm an outsider. He was a staffer for another senator in Connecticut. That's not a political outsider. But he sold everybody a bill of goods, and he's still sitting there 12 years later, the son of a bitch. It's, so it's... Ugh. Bah. Okay, I'll talk all night if I don't shut up and go away. Thank you, Jen.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate having you on too. So
it was good to finally talk to you somewhat in person. I dropped you a message in the private chat as well, Prospero.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Ending the broadcast. So have a good night, guys. And that is done. All right.